on any item not on today's agenda? Seeing no one come forward, the chair will close public comment and bring it back for approval of the minutes for our May 2nd meeting. Do I have a motion for approval?
I second it.
Okay, let's go through that. See if there are any questions for item number 1 of that agenda, 1210 Shoreline Drive. Item number 2, 1547 Shoreline Drive. Item number 3, 1548 Alameda Padre Serra. Item 4, 288 Cannon Drive. Item 5, 925 El Camino de la Luz. Item 6, 1630 Mira Vista Avenue. Item number 7, 406 North Ontario Road. Okay, is there any additional comment, questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can you just give us 1 minute, just because I didn't read these yet. I just wondered if I could skim through it real quick. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Cheryl, call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Let's go to the consent agenda for May 9th, 2016. Caitlin.
The consent calendar minutes for Monday, May 9th are as follows. Item A, 2201 Edgewater Way. This project was continued 1 week to consent. Item B, 504 East Valerio Street. This project was continued 1 week to consent. Item C, 101 Jorgensen Lane. This project received final approval as submitted. Item D, 2175 Las Tunas Road. This project was continued 1 week to consent. Item E, 612 Surf View Drive. This project received final approval as submitted. Item F, 920 Mission Ridge Road. This project received project design approval and final approval with the NPO findings. Item G, 1276 North Ontario Road. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and comments as noted. And item H, 2208 Anacapa Street. This project received project design approval with the NPO findings and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments as noted. And items A through H were reviewed by board members Woolery and Motisha.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion? David or maybe the to consent calendar, folks. On item G, apparently this was for removal of a non-native cypress tree. Was Parks supposed to look at this, or did anyone from staff look at the removal of that tree? If I'm reading this correctly?
Wait, that might have, on G, F? Did
Item
you say?
G.
G.
1276 North Ontario Road. I was just reading the motion, says the board finds the non-native tree cypress, so I was just asking if staff had input on that.
It was just something that the applicant wanted us to include in the motion.
Right, like whether we approved of the removal or not, and then they still had to go to the tree commission, the Tim Downey and all that.
And
to get
so
approval.
did you actually go out and see the street and the tree and how it
No, he
goes?
had pictures, though. We saw it through photos.
Because I know that, having now been out on that road a couple of times now because of other projects on that road, it has a distinct character, so I'm always a little nervous about when we say take trees out. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Okay. We have a motion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, let's go to the consent calendar for this morning, May 16th, 2016.
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, staff was not able to prepare the minutes for this consent calendar meeting just
Okay.
yet, so we will review those at the following full board meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, then let's go to announcements. Do we have any announcements?
Yes, I want to announce again that Katie Mamalski is going to be your planning technician for the Single Family Design Board. This will be the last meeting that I will be sitting in for. However, I'm sure I'll see you around, and I will still be involved with planning the tour of SFP projects, hopefully soon. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with all of you in the last 2 years or so.
And we do.
And I also want to announce another staff change that Leticia Miguel, unfortunately, is leaving us after a short period of time with us. She's moving to Auburn up north, and so she will. Is this your last full board meeting? Yeah, so that's her last full board meeting, and we'll have, I believe, Kathy Gu will be stepping in temporarily again.
Okay. Just started. Yeah, but Auburn had a call. Said, come, join the Sierra Nevadas.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Testing. Well, first of all, thank you to both of you and David especially for all your good service for us. And you just quickly mentioned the tour, but I just wanted to reiterate in case any of the public happens to be listening or interested in this. We are planning a tour for the board for all of us to go out and together in one of the city vans and look at some of the projects that have been brought to our attention, some of the maybe worst case scenarios or best case scenarios, and we're compiling a list. So if any member of the public has any projects that they think we should look at, or I've gotten a few emails about a few projects that people have actually been alarmed about, go ahead and send David or Katie an email so that we can make sure to try to include those in our tour.
Bernie, it should be pointed out that we'll only be looking at projects that have completed final approval from the city. Projects that are in construction or still in the process, et cetera, those aren't on.
Oh, we're not going to look at
They're not on
anything
our
under
list to look at this
construction.
point.
Okay, well, we'll probably do another phase then at some point. Thank you.
Okay. So, David, yes, thank you for all your hard work. And hopefully you figured out some stuff about how we operate, and you'll carry that forward. So thank you again, and best of luck on your next assignment.
Best of luck.
Any other announcements? Okay.
That
yes.
Board Member James and Board Member Miller will be absent from today's meeting.
Okay, we probably should take a roll call. So if we could have a roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board Member Woolery.
Here.
Board Member Pierce. Here. Board Member Morticia.
Here.
Board Member Bernstein.
Here?
Member Miller. And Chair Sweeney.
Here.
For the record, Board Member Miller and James is absent.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further announcements, then let's go to item number 1, 1448 Jesuita Lane. Jesuita Lane. Is this a new?
Yes.
This is a new item. Okay, so I need to read into the record as a new item, project description. This is proposal for additions and alterations resulting in a 1,392 additional square feet across both floors of an existing 5,500 square foot, two-story, single-family residence with an attached 842 square foot, three-car garage. Project involves converting 597 and 109 square feet of existing garage into habitable and utility space, respectively. It also involves converting 370 and 71 square feet of habitable space to a garage and utility space, respectively. The project proposes replacement of windows and doors, replacement of the motor court with permeable paving, a new fire pit, and an interior remodel. Proposed total of 7,603 square feet of development on a 10.26 acre lot in the Hillside Design District is 75% of guideline maximum floor to lot area ratio. We can take any action that we deem sufficient. So if you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jim Davis. I'm the architect for the project.
Could share with us what you're intending to do.
Sure. So the existing lot is up here right at the corner of the county-city limits. And it's at the very end of as you come up San Roque Road, that actually breaks off and you can go up Jesuita Lane, which is right here. So here's San Roque Road, and then there's a small little road that continues up and has a fire turnaround right here, but there's actually an access road that continues up to the sites. And so this is the actual building. This is only a partial site plan here, so we provided this just to show you that small portion of what you're looking at here. It's got a nice level flat pad up at the top. This is the existing garage, three-car garage with, above it is a second unit. And then over here is the main residence, which is a two-story structure as well. I'll show next additional site photos. And I have 3 copies of these too. You guys can. Each get one. So this here is just a key plan just showing for reference where this photo is taken from. So down right where the road breaks off, Jesuita comes off of San Roque. That's the street sign right there. This is the site right here. As you actually go back up the site, again, the driveway comes from the north. This is a view looking at it towards the north. So once you come up to the driveway, it opens up onto a large driveway motor court area, which there is number 1 looking at the garage with, again, above it, the second unit, and then the house beyond. And then the second photo from the side is from the north property line. You get a nice view there looking at what the existing condition is. And then for the third photo here, I'm sorry, I'm missing one photo, but it's on another sheet. So number 4 here is what we're looking at, which is more focusing on the area, and I'll get onto that when we look at the site plan and whatnot. I know you guys like to see context photos for the neighborhood, so that's what these are here. These are all the numbered diagrams showing each individual house. This, again, is the house, the subject lot for reference as well. So you can see there's quite a mix of styles up there. Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. This is the dashed line of the existing footprint of the structure. This is where the garage is, so we're trying to convert that into habitable space. So we're connecting that to the house. And the darker shaded areas are additions to the main house on the first floor. This area right here is currently a living room. We're proposing to convert that to garage as well as expand that, keeping it within the 750 square foot requirement of the planning department. This is a pool that is actually already permitted. And so on the back side, what we're also proposing to do is a covered patio, which we can look at further in the elevations. And then off of this lower floor, it's more of a family room that we're creating here. So we've got a little bit of covered arbor. And then over here is another covered area, which is for the sauna and the pool bath. Some of these additions are just for the kitchen. Some of them, just another TV area over here. Fire pit is out here to the south. Encompassing the site is a low wall. And that pretty much goes all the way around the site there. These are the existing floor plans. This is the existing columns that we're really trying to clean up. It makes the house look a little bit more massive, I think, than what it truly is. It kind of hinders the look of the house as well. So we're proposing to remove all those. And then here are the proposed floor plans again. More telling would be to look at the elevations and compare those two, so if you guys have questions. So these are the existing elevations. This is the north elevation. That's the garage again. This is the main house, and there's a covered breezeway between the two. And then this is the existing east. Nothing is really happening along this elevation. And then along the south, we're proposing to actually clean up. This is actually 45 degree that we're looking at. We're actually on the lower floor going to be trying to clean this up a little bit. And again, infill a little bit here. Remove this stairway. Remove this fireplace as well. So this is the new north elevation. When you drive up to the house, we're removing almost all of those columns and trying to give it much more of a Santa Barbara style look to it. Create a really unique entry coming in, or not unique, but entry that stands out. So you can walk up to this area here, and then this is to the area up above the garage. And then this is the proposed garage here as well. So you actually would drive into the side of this. The most drastic change would be along the back side of the house here too. Again, not really a whole lot changing over here. Just the proportion of the infill here, and closure of the breezeway. And here's how we were cleaning that up, just trying to pull this out a little bit to really take advantage of that view from the upstairs master bedroom. And I'll end my presentation there and wait for you guys to have some comments.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to public comment, staff, do you have any information that we need to know?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Have you received any communication?
No.
Okay. Seeing no one come forward, Chair will close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Who has questions?
Entry, where the entry is now. It is right
Entry right now is right here.
there, so you're moving the entry over to here.
Correct.
Okay. And the breezeway, the breezeway's going to be an entry.
It's actually a pitched roof right now. Yeah, we're completely demoing that and then creating a flat roof on top of it. But
Is there
yes,
a
that
deck-
breeze where
is there
that
a deck going on the
there
top
is a
of-
no
top of that
n-
entry?
not on the proposed or what we're doing. Let me verify that just to be safe. It's flat roof only.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yes, are
Yes.
the proposed garage doors made out of glass?
No. We're going with a much more traditional Spanish style look for this house, so they would be wood.
Just a follow-up to that garage door, but do you have an elevation of what that looks like?
That's what I'm going for here. Actually,
I was looking and I didn't see
I
it.
think I'm missing that actually, yeah.
Okay, so we don't have a picture of that, okay.
I think it might not have just didn't make it onto the viewport.
Okay.
Are you talking about the
Okay.
existing or the new?
The
No, what
proposed.
they're proposing.
The existing do show up on,
Yeah.
Other questions?
I do have one more question. So the existing stairs are being taken away and that you're connecting the two.
Everything's
So
being-
how, is there access from the ground up to that, where's that access?
on the interior.
Oh, it's on the interior, okay.
It
I
has
get
to be planning, well,
Oh.
for one, planning requires it,
Okay,
but there's a stairway.
okay, thank you.
Then the exterior stairs that you're showing on the other elevation is there. Is that existing?
No,
That's-
those are proposed as well.
Near the garage,
No.
These
the-
here,
the opposite.
the old garage.
the old garage, right.
Okay, other questions? All right, let's go to comments. We can take any action we so please. I would assume the applicant would like to have project design approval, at least at this point. So who has comments?
I mean, from what it looks like right here, it looks like quite an improvement, taking out all those columns and, I'm wondering about the south elevation and just the window demonstration, it being all the same, the squares, but all in all, I think it's an improvement.
Other comments?
I agree with Jamie.
Okay, I drove up to this site. This is at the far reaches of the city. This is way out there. The house can be seen from several points within the city, across the canyon, et cetera. So obviously, these windows on the south elevation are going to be lit at night, but they're not going to be much different than they are today, and a whole lot not different than the other homes on that ridge. And I see those homes. I happen to have a relative that lives on the opposite canyon, so when we sit out on their terrace at night, we can look across to this canyon, so I'm used to seeing the lights up there. So I don't, given the fact that this is way far away from anything, is not an issue, including if this is one of those cases, if they wanted to have glass doors, nobody'd ever see them, except if you're actually in the drive court, because there's no way to see it from the road, there's no way to see it from any other vantage point. So in that respect, I think the makeover of the house will be pretty nice. I am concerned about the color. I would hate to see it just go totally white up on that hill, but again, we haven't heard from you about color. And I also assumed, given the drawings you're showing, that the roof, the main piece of the roof is not being changed.
We're going to keep it with a mission style roof.
And then the only other concern I have, given the fact that this is on a road that has the same name as one of our most infamous fires in this city, that we're proposing, I'm looking for the site plan.
That one here, this one.
we're proposing an outdoor fire pit right at the top of the hill that's subject to burning. So I guess my question is, has this been reviewed by fire and city fire department?
No.
Okay.
That may easily become a water feature if that is an issue.
Yeah, that would be my one concern, given the fact where this house is.
Right.
And if any sparks ever came out of that fire pit, that whole hill is gone like that because of the nature of where this house is. So that would be a big concern in my part. But if the fire department says it can happen, I guess they can have it. But I think this is one of those cases. This is one of these houses on a 10-acre lot. It's very large. It's probably not something I'd want to see elsewhere in the city, but given the fact that it's on the fringe of the county and there's nothing else beyond it, it's hard to even get to and even see, except from the long distances. It's probably one of those cases where I'm comfortable with what's being presented. Ordinarily, I wouldn't like the plate heights. I wouldn't like several things, but given the fact it's out here far away from everything else, it's not going to have a big impact, I think. Other comments? If we have no other comments, then the chair would seek some sort of motion.
Motion. I move to give this project design approval with the following MPO findings. The project has consistent CF appearance with the scenic character of the city. And I guess enhance the neighborhood, although there's no neighborhood really. But compatibility in size, bulk, and scale with the neighborhood, and high level of quality of materials in architecture.
Okay. That's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so you mentioned height. What is the maximum, how tall is this place?
We're not changing any.
So it's
the
existing, so it's nothing, okay, yeah, okay. And was it involved at all in the fire the last time?
I don't believe so.
No.
This
Even though
one's-
the Casacita Lane, the
Right.
fire was
It
just on the other
jumped.
ridge.
Okay, thank you.
went right down the whole valley right there.
Right, it went right in front of them
Yeah.
on the outside. So they were lucky. Okay, other questions? Okay, hearing no further discussion, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, so carried. Okay, we'll see you when you get the final. This has a 10-day appeal period,
Thank you.
and we'll return when they're ready for final. Let's go to 2321 Edgewater Way. I'm looking to staff to tell us, I think this project has been with us before,
Yeah,
correct?
They're here a little bit. I don't know.
yeah, but.
No, this is
Is this a new one?
a new one.
Yeah.
I think like 3 or 4 times.
Okay, so this is not a new project. This was here before, and the only reason it's coming back to us now because you had to do some zoning mods?
No, we're just trying to finish the project.
Okay.
We came here a few times, made some revisions, reduced the size and height of the house. We went to PC, they approved it, and now we're back.
Okay, so you have not received project design approval at this point?
Right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I recuse myself on this because it's near my house.
Okay.
And also, we're 20 minutes early.
Staff tells me that we're in 15, 20 minutes, we're okay, but not much longer than that. We're right on the edge. Okay, so since you've been here before, why don't you just go ahead and bring us up to date, if you would, please?
Okay, there's an existing house on this Edgewater property. It's not an oceanfront parcel. It's screened from the street, very dense vegetation. It's a big, ugly house that we're tearing down. It's a fairly large lot. So we came here a few times. When you see the elevations, it'll ring a bell. And then we reduced the height of the house, square footage of the house, went on to PC. They approved it unanimously. And now we're basically cranking into working drawings. So here's Edgewater, the existing lot size, existing house, detached garage. Existing house is in the setbacks. Existing garage is in front and side setbacks. We had almost universal neighbor support around us. And when we were here originally, we had, the ocean's out in this direction. There's an existing one-story house on the ocean side of the property. We originally had deck, and you guys had us remove the decks along the side property lines. We put the new deck basically in here and just went with shed roof configurations to the side. And then, like I say, we reduced our height and square footage as part of that process. So just based on what you guys have seen, nothing is new. Nothing has changed, just more information, basically. We went with pocketing doors in here, which was something that was new. So we have a covered porch on the back, covered porch entrance, ocean views out in that direction. An existing hedge that's very, very tall and very, very dense blocks us on this side. And then there is a driveway that connects down to this flag lot down below on this side of us, so there's no adjacent neighbor on this side of the house. It's basically, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom house. Sorry. Reflected ceiling plans. Building sections. So here's the front elevation. Like, once again, it's you really can't see anything from the street. Looking down the driveway, you'll just see basically the end elevation of the garage. Side elevations, and nothing has changed from the previous meeting, and nothing's changed from the Planning Commission meeting. Here's the ocean side of the house with the master, the common deck between the two upstairs bedrooms, the sliding doors off of the great room. So here's our finish schedule. We're going to go with copper lanterns on the exterior typically. Door window schedule. Exterior details. Where's that color board that I brought in here? Oh. But the colors we're looking at is like a dark charcoal color asphalt shingle presidential roof tile, an ivory colored siding, and then a dark kind of a charcoal black window color, and then our chimney is going to be this gray stone material, and then all of the materials such as the cap, we've got a cupola, and gutters are going to be copper, and the lanterns as well. We've got a couple of civil sheets in here. Our stormwater management plan from our civil. And now we're getting into your stuff. You want to?
Sure. So this is the demolition plan, tree plan. All the screening in the front is to remain, as well as both sides of the property. We're removing a linden tree here and a few stumps, and a myoporum in the front. There's some queen palms and king palms that are going to be removed in the back. We're going to relocate this phoenix palm in the corner here to UCSB. And that's about it for tree removals. Hardscape plan. The driveway is going to be permeable pavers, running bond pattern. It'll be either this color scheme or this one. They're almost identical. And we'll set those with a permeable joint. There is a driveway gate proposed. It's set back quite a bit from the street. And Mr. Behrens and I, we did a drive-through around the neighborhood of driveway gates and took some photos of other gates in the neighborhoods, if you want to have a look at those. There's an entry pergola with a pedestrian gate, kind of marking the entrance there. Trash enclosure, woodboard detailing on that. This is a Cherokee blue flagstone walkway to the front. It's basically an Oklahoma stone, but a more blue-gray tone. And there's the Ipe deck in the front porch in the back. And Navajo gravel, which is along the side yards. Lighting, well, let me go through the back. We have a built-in hot tub in the on the back deck, bocce ball court, small lawn area, steps down to the lawn area, and a barbecue on the west side. Lighting, path lights along the paths on the driveway, a few downlights in this pergola, and some recessed step lights. And I'll get to the cut sheets on those later. Here's the detail sheet for driveway gate, trash enclosure gate, typical fencing detail, pergola detail and gate, mailbox. Paving details. The lights are FX Luminaire, all copper, all shielded. Planting, we've got a new jacaranda in the front, some citrus trees, Japanese maple, and an avocado over on the east of the spa. The general concept of the landscaping is ornamental grasses, flowering shrubs, and ground covers. The owners really like whites, purples, yellows, and some succulents mixed in. There's some additional screening. These existing Eugenias are basically like trees, so they're not screening well on the bottom of them, so we're adding additional screening in front of them for that lower screening. So I think that's about it.
Before we go to public comment, a question to staff. Since this is required to meet Planning Commission Resolution number 017-15, do we have a copy of that, or do we have anything in that resolution that this board should be paying attention to?
Staff would like to note that the screen backflow device, the backflow device is for fire sprinklers, pool, spas, and/or irrigation systems shall be provided in a location screened from public view or included in the exterior wall of the building as approved by the SFDB. And location of dry utilities, example, above ground cabinets shall be placed on private property unless deemed infeasible for engineering reasons. If dry utilities must be placed in the public right-of-way, they shall painted Malaga Green, and if feasible, they shall be screened as approved by SFDB.
Thank you. Okay, anything else from staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just some clarifying information, the square footage, and Mr. Meany, correct me if I'm wrong, it's 3,905 square feet at this point? FAR of 91%.
Right.
About 95.
Yeah, those were the original numbers when we first submitted, and then going through you guys, we reduced it.
Okay.
So our new number is
91.
a new number.
Thank you.
Oh, and if I can have the applicants just introduce themselves for the record.
Oh,
for the
Tom
public.
Meany, architect.
Aaron Carroll, landscape architect.
Yes, sorry. Used to seeing you guys here. Okay.
I can comment on the backflow.
Let me do this first, and then we'll come back to that. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Did we get any public comment?
No.
Okay, and the chair is going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions, but before we go there, you want to share with us now?
Yeah, we've got the backflow preventer located on the site plan. It's behind the fence and the existing plantings.
And is that approvable by the city public works, given the fact that it's behind the fence? Because they have to get to that, do they not? Do you have a gate there?
Good point.
Every backflow preventer I've ever had to deal with has got to be out where they can get it at it immediately. And
I'll look into that.
They always get to be a pain in the neck.
If we put it out on the public side, I guess we'll just add some shrubs and things.
All right,
on
and
there.
then do you have anything else on the public side that we need to worry about, Malaga Green?
We do have a mailbox that's
Okay.
we're replacing in the same location as the current mailbox.
But you have none of these dry wells or any of the other devices that are part of your tier requirements, no?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right, then let's go to general questions from the board. Oh, and before I do that, we forgot to do this.
Want me to read it?
Would you read that, please? This is the last action that this board took before they went to planning commission?
Right. It was on December 1st, 2014. And the motion was we continued the project indefinitely to the Planning Commission for return to full board with the following comments. Number one, the board appreciates the reduction in plate heights in conjunction with the FAR, the removal of the 3 upper level decks, and sensitivity to surrounding neighbors through screening. Number two, in relation to the adjacent properties, the board finds that this project does not pose any significant visual impacts. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions? I made just a quick list here of things. The main gate, show me on the site plan. I was looking for it on this plan.
The driveway gate?
Yeah, the driveway gate.
All right, those are the posts right
Oh,
there.
there it is. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Okay. And then on when this project first came to us, the first 2 or 3 times, we did have public comment. We had an adjacent neighbor, I believe, on the west side that was quite concerned about the height of the hedges and so forth. Have you communicated to them about where these plans are at this point?
Yes, and actually, this was the neighbor that was initially concerned, and they became supportive of the project, and now they're talking about adding on to their house as well. So that's one reason why we're doing the supplemental screening down on this section.
And then, let's see, I think you showed me the fence. And then this goes to the plan, since we didn't get a copy of the planning commission report. I'm assuming, was there typical language in the planning commission approval about construction time, construction noise, dust, all that stuff? Do they have the normal things they usually put on?
Well, I believe so.
Okay. And I think that's all my questions.
Do you see from the first floor, do you have an ocean view from the first floor? Or do you see over the house?
The house is in front of them. It's got a low-pitched roof, so you see horizon on the left and right side of the house. You don't see horizon over the center part of the house.
Other questions?
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Is the Carex Pragracillus going to be the lawn area?
No, that is sort of near the front porch where there's some shade.
Okay.
I think we might have it other places, but this one.
And so you're just using like a marathon or something like that?
At this point, I have it to be determined by owner.
Oh, okay.
As far as the turf species.
Okay, other questions? My last question is an honesty question. It appears you've got drawings that look kind of like they're done. So are you there yet?
Well, when I was going through the checklist here, it made reference to all the consultants' drawings as well. We don't have all the consultants' drawings. You don't have like structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical.
Okay. Because typically we're supposed to give final approval based on a complete set.
Yeah,
So if you don't have it,
we don't have that.
the board might give you final today, but final at consent calendar.
That's fine.
All right. Any other questions? Let's go to comments. That we could, in fact, give the project design approval because it did not receive that based on the fact they had to go to Planning Commission. We could also give it final approval if the board deemed that the drawings are sufficient, or we could give it project design approval and then final to go to consent calendar if the board so chose. Comments? While we're waiting, that white, the white of the house, I'm assuming you're shooting for a kind of a white with black trim.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard to judge white, particularly under these lights.
Right. We don't want a bright white.
So
we want like a
that's what
warm
I'm
ivory
a little
color.
concerned that it could be really bright white,
Yeah, we don't want that.
and particularly on the front gates.
Mhm.
And I didn't ask you, on the front gate, are you going to have any combination, or is it just going to be the white, or is it going to be a combination of white and black?
On all the wood, I'm calling it out as natural wood or painted to match house. Either or.
So, well, like the fence, the fence appears to be wood. So right now
Yep.
you're saying that's either one?
Well, okay, the perimeter fencing would likely stay natural wood because we're saving some of the existing fencing,
Okay.
which is natural wood.
Mhm.
The gates,
At the street elevation.
yeah, it's going to be natural wood or it's going to be white.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to comment on that. then-
Okay. Well, I think that's a decision of the board, at least to make a comment on whether they will accept either or both. Okay. Other comments?
Well, I'm a little concerned about the white on this. I mean, there's just, especially on this west elevation, it's just such a lot of house that I know I would prefer to see it be a little bit more of a darker color, actually. Is it shingle, right? I'm not used to seeing white on shingle. I guess I've seen it before, but I think that's otherwise it's a nicely designed home. I just I think my only concern is the white color.
It seems to me it's something like that you would see down in Laguna.
Yeah, the
A
white
lot of that.
cottage type house. Yeah.
I think the white on the shingle will definitely have shadows and shades. I mean, all the lines that your shingles are forming will tone down. It won't be solid white. It will be.
What I might suggest, which is I find always helpful, since you mentioned that their favorite colors for planting, I think you said white, yellow, and lavender. Is take that palette of colors along with your green palettes, because all of this is going to be, it's a composition of the architecture and the landscaping. You might look at the white type of color. I'm not saying you shouldn't do a white house, but take the white color and look at with those colors together, and then see if, because there's 100 different whites, and then see if there's a white that could tone it down a little bit and be compatible with those three predominant flowering colors that would look appropriate. Because I'm just looking at this under this light and my memory of what those three colors look like, that may not be the right white. You may want to look at how it sits with those other three colors, particularly, because you're going to be using those in various forms around the house. So that little exercise might get you to a different white. Other comments?
Actually, a question. So your doors are going to be the black color? What color are your doors?
Probably.
So it's basically a
Black and white
traditional,
house.
it's a traditional kind of East Coast
Yeah.
cottage
Yeah, I see. Okay.
style.
And those are the pictures that she was showing me.
And all the windows surround, all the trim.
Yes, Jamie.
Yes, I think that the grasses on the landscape plan will really look nice with that style of house. So
Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, if not, the chair would entertain some sort of motion.
I'll try. I move that we give the project design approval, but continue it for final approval to consent and indefinite, or whenever we would like,
As soon as we get our consultants.
for
Just make it indefinite, because he's getting his
indefinite.
consultants.
And no, design approval. Do we need all the
Yeah, you need to,
details?
you need
Yeah.
to,
That it's we find that it's consistent with the appearance and compatible with the neighborhood, and has quality of architectural materials, and landscaping is nice, and seem to have followed good neighbor guidelines with talking to your next door neighbor, and that's all.
okay. That's your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Would the maker of the motion consider some language that urges the applicant to study further before they return for final the white color of the house
Yes.
in combination with the landscaping predominant colors?
Yes.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the second of the motion?
Yes.
Any further conversation, questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none, the chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. We're, again, about 20 minutes ahead of time, so the chair is going to call for a short recess until about 10 after, and we'll return for item 4.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has a 10-day appeal period.
Item 3.
Item number 3. Oh, excuse me. Item number 2. We're at item number 3, 3416 Marina Drive.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can we return to item number?
Oh,
the
yes,
motion
I'm
number,
sorry.
Number
Okay.
1.
Hold that thought. In fact, we need to return to two things, but let's go back to item number 1. We had a motion, and if you could remind us again, what was the general nature of our motion for item 1? Did we give it project
The
design approval?
motion was to give it project design approval with the NPO findings. However, it wasn't clear whether this project would be continued
Okay.
indefinitely or to the full board or consent. So we
Who
just need
made the
some-
motion, please?
She
it was
did.
Jamie
Okay.
Pierce.
Jamie, would you consider a second motion to clarify whether it's returning to the full board or to the consent calendar? Indefinitely or in 2 weeks?
Just a second. I think it was to go to consent. To come back to consent, and we were also going to be looking at the color.
Okay. So that's a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I second it.
Okay. Any further
Yeah,
clarification?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so because she just brought up, we were going to look at the color, could you read the motion to us, and what did we say about the color?
Nothing.
We didn't. She's
Well,
adding.
we didn't.
she's
You're
this
adding
to
it,
the
so
note.
you should maybe say it a little bit more directive. What
It wasn't
col-
addressed. It wasn't addressed.
We had concern, I know.
It wasn't addressed. That's
Right,
right.
it wasn't.
But it can be.
Why?
Mhm. So we had concerns about
It being too white.
it being too white, and I had forgotten to put that in the motion.
Okay. So can we make sure that's clarified in the motion? that when it returns to consent calendar, the applicant will convey color choices because the board was concerned about the project being too white up on that ridge. Is that okay?
Yes.
Is that okay
Thank
with the
you.
seconder?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Oops, yes.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, having trouble following some of the projects. The comment on the color, that was from the second project that we reviewed.
No, but
Was there
No.
We had
I know.
specific concern germane to the first project?
Yes.
We, well, we didn't address the color on the first project. I think,
She's adding that.
Chairman,
into
you're,
our motion.
Okay, just wanted to be clear about that.
It's different than the white issue that we had about the second project.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
But do we want to say anything stronger, like bring in some alternatives, or
Well,
they're
they're
gonna
to study
have
it.
to.
implied,
It's
but
implied, they have to study it. And
Okay.
they're going to have to,
bring
they're
the
gonna
color
have to
chart.
get final
bring the
approval.
color chart,
They have to
okay,
bring, remember, final approval is colors and everything.
okay.
Okay? All right, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions, so carried. And then one other housekeeping piece I forgot, and I apologize, to bring to the public's attention that at our approval of our consent calendar for, or was that this morning? 100 East Constant, was that this
Yes,
morning?
that was this morning.
We did not review the minutes
Oh,
for
okay.
this morning's
All right,
consent.
so then I guess I was not base. We did receive a communication about this morning's Constance address, 100 East Constance, about this morning's consent calendar from a neighbor. So I think we should just note that that letter was received this afternoon and not received this morning. Therefore, the consent team did not see it. Okay? And it's a letter dated, is there a date on here? Yeah, May 19th, 2016, from a Florence Sanchez at 116 East Constant Avenue. Okay, that's just a note clarification. Let's now go to item 3, 3416 Marina Drive. This project was last reviewed on November 30th, 2015. Before I have Denise read our last action, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Jacob Nixto, project architect with Peter Becker Architects.
Jessica Harlan.
You're on.
Jessica Harlan with Barefoot Design Landscape.
Thank you. Welcome. Denise, if you could read our last comments, please.
Yes. The board found acceptable the 108% of the guideline maximum floor-to-lot area ratio given the large size of the lot and the location by Hope Ranch. Number 2, the board found the design and style of architecture generally acceptable, study lowering the roof pitch of the side elevation. 3, restudy to revise the proportions and scale of the arch openings of the barn and horse stall areas and provide stronger arch openings. 4, revise the scale and proportions of the proposed light fixtures. 5, revise the scale and proportions of the proposed window shutters to be stronger and provide similar stronger shutters on the addition. 6, provide a landscape plan. Action Woolery Miller 500, motion carried. James and Pierce were absent.
Thank you. So if you could share with us what you've done now to address some of those.
Actually, Mr. Chair, excuse
Yeah.
me. Before we begin with the presenter's presentation, I just want to note that on the agenda, this project was incorrectly listed as final review. This is actually a second concept review. It came in initially for a one-time concept review. I also want to add that staff unfortunately has not had a chance to complete a thorough plan check. So the project cannot be approved today. However, if this board feels that the project is able to get project design approval, you can make the notes to that effect for a future review.
So if the board decided to do that, it would be subject to staff review?
Correct.
Or a action to codify the board's desire for project design approval at consent calendar or
You
some
can
other
continue the
location?
project
Or
to
continue.
either full board or consent and
Okay.
make comments to the effect that this project is the board finds that it's good enough for project design approval if this board comes to that conclusion.
All right, so we have that option as we discuss it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you could share with us what you've done.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the comments in terms of relating to both the arched openings and the side massing is that previously when we were presenting, we have this porte cochere that's kind of a drive-through to the motor court, and then there's kind of two access points to this property. Previously, the porte cochere was a gable up and a gable back down that kind of popped above the similar linear gable here. And what we've done is we've kind of created a cross, a gable face on this end and this end that allows the arch to be taller, to be more of a taller.
You could show us on the elevations.
Taller proportion, stronger proportion. The new cross gable, and we've taken a lot of inspiration from the Reginald Johnson stables and looking at those, and in our kind of studies, they're almost a complete circle, such that the width and height are very similar, and we've got a little bit of slope on this one, so we can't make both sides since it is a porte cochere. It's got an arch on each side. So on kind of the one side, we've got a similar matching proportion there, and on the other side, it's just a slight bit less to accommodate the slope of the natural slope of the landscape there. So that also addressed from this side. Previously, there was a little bit taller ridge that came up, and I believe that was the comment that was mentioned from the side elevation. Then in terms of the shutters, we've looked at kind of an Andalusian style inspired by the courthouse here, whereas the existing shutters, although it's not drawn here, were simply a slat shutter. But we've replaced both on the existing house and on the new proportion with that style shutters as well. The lighting fixture, I don't believe we had a lighting proposal at the first time, but we do have these detail sheets, lights that are very similar for the new portion that would match the existing portion, and kind of over the porte cochere, a little hanging lantern, kind of typical welcoming style. One other minor change, we did add an exterior fireplace. Come back. Detailed here, but there is a current. It's best shown on the floor plans on A21. There is currently an existing kind of spa enclosure off of what is the garage, which is a little odd. But in our configuration, this becomes a new bedroom, so this becomes a much more usable kind of private space, adding a little outdoor fireplace into that gas, not wood burning, just a gas fireplace into that area. And then comment 6, landscape plan.
Ocean down here?
I'm sorry?
Ocean down here?
Yes.
So here is our irrigation plan. My main focus for the landscape was just in this disturbed area inside this limit of work, which is really just this new drive court and associated landscape. We are using all drip irrigation, and we're proposing a new controller that's going to be located in this garage that will kind of update the system to meet current state standards.
I need to talk into the
Sorry.
Just take
Bring
it
it over.
Yeah, bring it over.
Yeah, so the existing point of connection is here at the main line that comes off the water meter, and we're just kind of tying into that existing system and then updating the controller element and doing new drip tubing for the landscape. And then for the planting itself, we're taking inspiration from kind of the classic Hope Ranch Riding Club look with strong kind of colors and textures using broadleafed plants to create a kind of nearly subtropical feeling, while also trying to be sensitive to low water use by using plants that kind of give you the aesthetic of subtropical and bright bougainvillea type colors. We're using little succulents, agave, or aeonium jelly green for a broader leafed yet water-wise plant at the entry, as well as Salvia chiapensis. We have some giant birds of paradise that work with the elevation to kind of accent the picture windows that are in the front. We have a series of 3 trees that are the Olea europea Swan Hills that are to just create and expand upon the courtyard feeling. We are leaving this whole zone open to preserve views for the neighbor above. And then we're using kind of classic white roses, the Rosa iceberg, gardenia, and then some bougainvillea up against the walls to give that kind of very classic old Hope Ranch Riding Club feeling. And then in the drive court, we're going to be using permeable paving, something like the Bellegarde Old World paver, or that just gives you the kind of feeling of Old World cobbled courtyard. We have a little sandstone, Santa Barbara sandstone wall that will have a kind of central sculptural element that is to be determined. The client hasn't chosen that quite yet.
Okay, thank you. Staff, do we have any further comment on this project? No?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Did we receive any communication?
No.
Okay, thank you. The chair will then close public comment and bring it back to the board for questions.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chair. The
Yes.
first one is for staff, because as I recall, when this first came, we had a lot of people here and a lot of neighbors here. Is that correct?
I don't think we did.
That is my recollection.
Right. Do you remember?
We had a neighbor come and speak in support, and we received a few letters of support as well.
Yeah, but didn't we have a
No,
lot of...
this is a property next door to a property where we
That's
had
the
a whole
vacant
bunch
one.
of...
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
I'm sorry, if I just want to clarify, it was,
Yeah.
there was support for the project. The one that you're probably
This
referring to
one.
was the neighboring.
Okay.
It was a property right here.
I know what you're saying. So could you show me, the one thing I didn't quite follow was the conversion of the stables into the covered porch. Could you just show me that so I could understand it, and altering the roof above it? So no more stables, right?
No, so currently there's 6 bays in this structure here, and we are taking 2 of them to and turning those into a covered porch that also has an arch, similar to the arch here. There'll be an arch here, and there's also a large arch on the front door of the residence now, so that they kind of talk to each other.
Walk together, okay.
Yes, exactly.
I see.
So here's the existing stables from the south and north, kind of symmetrical. We're taking away, I believe it's these 2 bays, and that becomes a pass-through. That's the elevation. I can show you that on the plan as well.
All right.
So we have an existing stable where I guess the one end is kind of the tack room, and there's 5 stables. And so we're taking that, and the current owners are not avid equestrian, but they like the feel of the look, and so they would like to kind of make that add to the ambiance rather than just have.
Yeah, my understanding too is that they would like to see horses there in the future, but can't imagine ever having more than 2.
Well, okay, thank you. That
Okay,
makes
other-
more sense.
Other questions?
One address for La Marina, but and also looks like the main entry is off of
Yeah.
off of Ranch.
They have
So-
two easements, one's here,
Yeah.
one over there, and the main one's over there.
Marina Drive actually kind of dead ends into this here. So they're the last
okay,
gate
okay.
there. And then this over here is a kind of a back driveway that leads down to Cliff. It was originally used by some of the houses further up the hill, but then there was another access road put in there. So this is kind of a secondary access point.
I like what, go ahead. I'll wait for my
So you
comments.
were saying you've talked to the neighbors and you got a lot of support for this from most everybody in the.
Yeah, the owners had watched their neighbors and were very conscious of
The
trying
one with
to.
the empty lot?
Yes, and the neighborhood, and so they were very conscious of wanting to keep a single-story addition. Talked with the neighbors, and they went around well ahead of time and solicited input. So
Thank you.
I recall these neighbors participated in that process over here. Okay, other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. As pointed to us by staff, staff has not had sufficient time to give it full vetting. So if we chose to give a project design approval today, it would be subject to staff approval and would probably have to be formalized at either this board or consent. So you may want to decide whether the project, if you chose to give it project design approval, should come back to the full board or move on to consent.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I just
Yes.
want to clarify, the board can't give it project design approval yet, so it's basically
So we
comments
can't do
only.
anything.
It's comments only.
Okay, comments only. All right, thank you. So let's go to comments. Yes.
Yes. I think the landscape plan looks fine, except for I'm concerned about the papyrus, and I know that you have it close into the building, but still, like it is, there's one on the edge, and they are an invasive. So I would recommend just,
Eliminating it.
yeah,
That's fine.
maybe even all of them.
That's fine.
Think of something else.
That's fine.
Okay.
Other comments?
I like how you've incorporated the back stable now with the house, since they're not using that whole thing, and the arches. And it looks very, looks very nice. Thank you.
All right.
I agree. I think the architecture looks great. It's a great improvement. I like your choice of shutters. I think those really make a big difference. And I think the landscape plan looks good. So I'm in support of the project.
I'm just going to share with you all. I think that's what you were referring to when you said we were kind of akin to Reginald Johnson's. This is the stables at Hope Ranch, so that's the arch, just for reference. I think it's done what we asked you to do. I'll be interested to see what the color of the shutters are and the color of the house. I'm assuming you're going to repaint. So.
they were wanting to kind of match the existing something.
Okay.
I don't know if staff has the photographs, but it's kind of a.
So that's the wall color.
That's the wall color.
And then this is the shutter.
Window and shutter color, and then kind of the exposed wood.
Right. So any further comments? Okay, then the chair would look for a motion, and as staff has advised us, it's comments only.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion
Yes.
that I move to, I guess, are we going to just continue it?
Well, your motion needs to either address it to be continued to the full board or to the consent calendar
Okay.
with comments.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the project to the consent calendar. The board appreciates that you have been here before and you have listened to the suggestions that we had and you have acted on those suggestions. We find that the design does meet our guidelines in terms of its consistency and appearance, and it is compatible with the neighborhood. We appreciate that you meet the good neighbor guidelines and you've talked with your neighbors. The architecture is quality and the materials seem appropriate for the neighborhood, and the landscape plan takes into account the drought tolerant and The only thing we didn't talk about was, let's see, there's no pool, right? And you're getting rid of the jacuzzi.
There is no pool, but the jacuzzi will stay.
This jacuzzi stays, okay. And we would like you to come back to consent with after you meet with the staff.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay. Is there further discussion?
Do-
Yes.
I don't know if we need to put anything in about the papyrus, but
Sure, let's
Going to
put
change
in
it.
that the landscaping design will eliminate the papyrus treatment. Okay.
Okay, is that acceptable to the seconder?
Chop it down.
It's minor.
What
Fine
even
with-
is
yeah,
a
fine with the
papyrus?
Seconder says it's okay. Okay, friendly amendment adopted. Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, Chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, so carried. Okay, we'll see you at consent calendar.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
On the chart, we can make them have one of those plans.
I don't know if David needs that or not. Okay. Still on? So we're going to go to item number 4. This is 45 Los Alturas Circle. This is here for a second concept review. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Project was last reviewed on November 16th, 2016. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning, and Chris Cottrell's here too. He's in the building department, and we're running 20 minutes early. I can go ahead and start, and I think he'll be in here by the time I finish.
And you're with your...
Vanguard Planning. I also represent the applicant,
Okay.
Drew Finley. So this was here a little while back, and I guess I'll start by saying this is the exact same project the board considered
Okay,
before.
well, before I have you do that, I'm going to have Denise read what our last action was, please.
Okay. This was back November 16th, 2015, and the motion was as follows. It was continued indefinitely to the full board with the comment that the board could not support the proposed second-story design as presented, as the project does not meet the neighborhood compatibility criteria. The board encouraged the applicant to study to redesign the project to be more compatible with the neighborhood and for both the applicant and neighbors to work together with the Good Neighbor Guidelines to achieve neighborhood compatibility. Action James Pierce, 501. Motion carried. Miller abstained, and Sweeney was absent.
Okay, so if you could share with us how you address the board's concern.
So I was here at the last hearing, even though I wasn't part of this project team yet at that point. Chris was part of the team. And I watched the public comment and listened to the board deliberations, and there was a lot of misinformation presented during the public comment period about what the neighborhood was, and very limited scope presented about what the neighborhood was. Most people talked about just this street versus the neighborhood, and really looked at this neighborhood versus what this board typically considers as a neighborhood. So we thought it would be beneficial to actually put up story polls of this project, which we hope everybody had a chance to get up and look at. And so we did that, and then also wanted a chance to present really what the neighborhood context is in front of the full board and get a fair look at this project. That's what we want to do today. So this is the neighborhood. This is the house in question, 45 Los Alturas Drive, and all the homes around it. And what you guys didn't see last time is everything with the circle on it is a two-story home. Okay, it was sort of presented last time that this is all a one-story neighborhood. And really, it's not a one-story neighborhood. These are all the homes in the surrounding neighborhood. And what we did is we just looked at the parcels that would typically be considered in a 20 closest homes analysis, sort of around the site. And we could continue going out here, and a lot of these are two-story homes too, but, we didn't want to overkill it. Here's our site, and here's sort of everything around this street, which is what was sort of talked about last time. But if you do want to just talk about the street itself, this is Los Alturas Circle. And on Los Alturas Circle, we have 9 homes. And of those 9 homes, 2 of the homes existing are two-story homes. And the placement of those homes is critical. They're actually the 2 homes you drive by on the way into this neighborhood as you come in. They're sort of the gateway to this neighborhood, are 2 two-story homes that you pass by on your way in. Here's a photo of those as you come in here. So there's this house here, and then it's hard for me to see it upside down here, but this house down in the back. So that's 20 Los Alturas Circle and 15 Los Alturas Circle down here. So take a closer look at those. That's 15 Los Alturas Circle, 2-story house. And I was here at the last hearing, and a lot of the neighbors said, oh, well, that's way down at the end of a driveway. Well, that's kind of a creative description of it. That's the actual pavement of Los Alturas Circle right there, and this is the house. And I don't know, I stood up there, and it's hard for me to consider that way down at the end of the driveway. I consider that to just be a 2-story house that fronts the street like any other 2-story house does. This is the house at 20 Los Alturas Circle, 2-story house. Again, these are 2 houses you drive by on the way into the neighborhood. And I think it's interesting, if you take a look, again, at the placement of these homes on the street, if you were to, say, come in and you were developing this whole subdivision at one time with a mix of 1- and 2-story homes, and you look at the placement of these, you've got a 2-story, a 2-story, and some 1-stories, and you were going to have another 2-story home, you probably would spec that out here, here, or here to get a nice mix of 1- and 2-story homes along that street. It's just a very natural placement. So we put up story poles to see what the true impact of this modest 2nd-story addition would be. That's the raw shot taken from the middle of the cul-de-sac, sort of the worst-case view that we can get of the property. Then what I did is I highlighted those in bright yellow so you could see them better. But the addition is not going to be bright yellow. So here's the same story poles highlighted in a more neutral color that sort of more matches the roof color. And you can see how this masses out. And it masses out right in line with the rest of the house and the rest of the structures right along the street and the rest of the existing vegetation. And what we have is a very modest 2nd-story addition that is in keeping with the rest of the house and compatible with the rest of the neighborhood. Here's another view of it from a neighbor's house, sort of from in their yard, from 30 Los Alturas Circle, what a neighbor might see. And that's our story poles over there. Here they are in bright yellow again. And then here they are again in a more neutral color. And again, this is not some devastating, incompatible 2nd-story addition. It's a modest 2nd-story addition on a house. You are allowed to do 2nd-story additions on homes in this zone district. Lots of people do them. 2 of our neighbors on this street have done them, and that's about 22% of the homes on this street. And of course, as I showed you in this previous slide or exhibit, many of the surrounding neighbors are 2-story homes in this neighborhood, and the neighborhood is far beyond the street. So that's really my presentation in terms of neighborhood compatibility. I don't think there's any question that this is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And I'm going to let Chris talk about the actual addition itself and the specifics of that.
Thanks, Jared. Chris Cottrell, architect. Mr. Chair, I believe you were absent when we reviewed this last time.
I was recovering from surgery.
Yes, sir. So I
did
just wanted...
watch it on the video.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll be brief. This proposal that we've got today, this is the exact same proposal we came with last time. There are no changes to it. Just like last time, what we've done is located this 2nd-story addition, which is a 14% This is 14% of the building footprint, this second-story addition. It's very small, very compact. It's a master suite. It is, the closest property line is 40 feet away. The closest neighbor is 69'7", 70 feet away. The allowable height there is 30 feet. We're proposing 23'6" to the ridge. So we're well under the allowable height. We've arranged if I can flip over to the plan, the living space and the fenestration to maximize the privacy for both the occupants and the neighbors. So we focused the living space out. We've got neighbors on this side and down here, and we don't have any living space windows that would be a view issue. We also did a section showing the neighbors. So here's our site section. And this is again showing that distance to the neighbor's house. There's just no privacy issues with this very modest addition. Let's see. One of the items the board proposed last time was, could we study alternative locations for this? And we did. We looked at the site, and the one thing I will say is this site, it is the largest site on the street. It's 1.1 acres. Now, it is hindered by a significant slope. So there is a premium on the flat area of the buildable area. The soils are not the best, and one area we looked at doing this was right off the existing bedroom wing. Now that would have us cut down these mature trees, and the owner just does not want to cut down those mature trees, and we didn't want to get that close to the slope. So the site that we proposed last time is sort of where we narrowed in. This is a classic example of the wedding cake architecture that we've been directed to, where it's stepped in. The second story is stepped in. And I can go through the plans a little more, but Mr. Chick, you saw it last time. I'm happy to rest there if you want to close.
We've covered it all.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty clearly compatible. It's a very minor addition on the second floor. Again, it's just 14% of the footprint. And one other thing I would point out is if we were to expand this house down here and closer to this slope, this is something which, have windows looking out. This is actually getting closer and possibly does look into neighbors even more than the way you have it designed right now. Something to think about.
All right, Mr. Chair, I have one more item. The FAR, the existing FAR is 58%. We're proposing 77% FAR. The neighbor to the south, existing house, is 93% FAR. So we're well under the 85% recommended guideline.
That's all we have.
Thank you.
If you have any questions.
Thank you. Okay, staff, is there anything we need to know before we go to public comment?
No.
Thank you. Okay, I see several folks in the audience. If you wish to address this board on this item, if you'd fill out one of these yellow slips and please bring it to staff. I've got several speakers already here. I'm going to ask each of you have 2 minutes to address the board. And I'm going to review just for a second so that everybody here in the audience understands the process. This project is here as what we call a second concept review, so the board has already looked at it once. We'll look at it again today. Unless the staff advises me otherwise, the board can take one of at least 2 actions. It could give it project design approval with comments. It could give it project design approval without comments. It could decide that there's not sufficient information to give it this project design approval and would ask for it to be continued either to this board or to consent calendar. However, if we do give it project design approval in any form today, that approval is appealable within 10 days of this action. In other words, 10 days from today, that appeal goes directly to the City Council. Now, I can tell you that on the time that I've been on this board, which is now close to 5 years, On the few appeals that we've had of our decisions, there's only been one that was upheld at City Council. All the other ones were returned to this board for further work until we resolve the issues. So, having said that, the other procedure in this meeting is we will go through public comment. Each of you have 2 minutes to address the board. We have you on a timer. Once you address the board, I will then close public hearing. At that point, the conversation is between the board members and the applicant. At the end of that, we typically will start with questions. The board will pursue their questions about their project, and then we will go to comments. They'll provide comments, and then the chair will ask for a motion of some sort. So that's the process. So if I can have the first speaker come here, it looks like, is it Vaughn Voigt?
So I'm going to go first
Okay.
for us. And I have
Excuse me, your name, please?
Carolyn Vogt. And
Carolyn, okay.
I'm speaking on behalf of 2 other people.
Okay, let me know who you are speaking on behalf of.
Tranquila Fry.
Okay, hold on a minute, let me get.
There. She's over here, the woman in the blue.
Okay, I understand, but I have to keep track of who's doing what.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's Fry, and you're speaking also on behalf
Patty
of.
Monroe.
Okay,
Yeah, I have something for all of you.
all right.
And we'll just pass out something for all of you.
So you'll have 6 minutes, please.
Yeah, all right, so when do you want me to start?
You can start right now.
All right, okay. I've given all of you a little handout here. My name is Carolyn Vogt, and I live 2 houses from the proposed development. And I just want to clear up one thing that they mentioned. There are not 2 two-story houses. They took a picture of a house. There are several houses on the street.
Excuse me, before you complete,
Yeah.
just so the board understands,
Yeah.
could you show me on this map,
okay.
please, where you live?
Okay.
I need
This? Okay, maybe I'll just start
Excuse me, I
from the
need to have,
beginning here.
excuse me.
Yes, I'm going
This
to
is
tell.
on television. There's
Yeah.
a camera above us, so
Okay.
if you could come over here and just
here.
point to where.
Okay, where I live here.
Okay.
And the proposed house is here in the pink.
Okay, all right.
This is a unique development.
Okay, thank you. I just
okay.
need to get that clarified.
All right,
Thank you.
okay. So, well, you know this has been here before. I'm going to get right to the point. 100% of the neighbors on this cul-de-sac oppose this addition. Las Alturas Circle is a distinct neighborhood, as you can see here. It's a little cul-de-sac. There are only 9 houses here on this cul-de-sac, all built between 1950 and about 1970s, all mid-century modern style, except for the one that burned down in the T-fire but was rebuilt in a similar style. And we'll show you pictures of these houses in a minute. On the map here, highlighted in yellow, are the various lot sizes. The proposed development is on the largest lot size, the pink one here at 1.03, a little over an acre. So they have plenty of room to go off to the side, and it will not affect the neighbors as they suggest. It's not necessary to build up if they don't think the 3,000 square feet that they have is enough. All the houses on the street have 1 story facing this cul-de-sac. There are some houses, except for one, which my husband will address. There are some houses that have other rooms below, such as the one that they mentioned. But the point is that facing the street, you get a 1-story aspect. I don't know how many of you went up there to see the story poles, but if you went up there, you could see that this is a 1-story. The part that's facing the street is 1 story. The reason these are all 1 story is that these houses were built under CCNRs that were established in the 1950s. The CCNRs expired in 1975, but by that time, all of the houses had been built out, and they were in this 1-story type. The CCNRs, that's Exhibit 2. If you look here, that's Exhibit 2. I've highlighted it. It says that they're to be 1 story. There's an exception for the 1 story if the topography of the lot requires that there be 2 stories. Then they can have a 2nd story that's no higher than 5 feet above the roof line of the 1-story portion. But clearly on this lot, the topography did not require 2 stories because there's a 3,000 square foot 1-story there. Clearly the original intent of the development there was on this cul-de-sac for all the houses to have a low 1-story character. Additionally, this neighborhood, I've got a 3rd exhibit here then. This neighborhood has long been recognized as a 1-story neighborhood. And if you look at the the third exhibit. There's a letter that was written to the city of Santa Barbara in 1993, and that's over almost 20 years after the CCNRs expired. And in that letter, and in this particular lot, they wanted to put an addition on the house. And they say in the letter to the city of Santa Barbara, in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, we have kept the addition to 1 story. So we're at the very top of the Riviera. From where we are, you can see in every direction. You can see the mountains, you can see the sea. And the fact that all the houses are low provides an expansiveness and an openness for everybody there. The only reason for one lot to build up higher than the others is that they can see, so they can see into everybody's lot and also block everybody's view. In this particular case, it's not necessary because there's plenty of room. They have the largest lot on the street if they want to expand, and nobody has anything against that. The owners of this property bought it a little over a year ago. They live in New York. The property is leased out. And maybe that's not why they've never lived there. Maybe that's why they're not familiar with the ambience of this particular cul-de-sac and how it feels to have this openness and expansiveness with the low lots at the very top of this hill, this ridge. As I've said before, if the owners need room, additional room, there's plenty of room because they have the largest lot. And so we would ask you to join with 100% of the neighbors in finding that the second-story addition is incompatible with what is there right now, which is a 1-story neighborhood, essentially. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there is it Bonvoy? Is it?
Don Vogt.
Don Vogt.
Yeah.
Okay. Is he ready to speak?
And I'm speaking.
You need to
Sir,
be
if
on
you
the
could sit down and speak into the microphone, please.
I'm speaking on behalf of myself and 2 others, at least, or two other people who are willing to give their minutes to me, Fred Davis and Tom Monroe. And I have handout packages for you. Don't worry, there's not a lot of text here, it's mostly pictures. If you could each take one of those. How many do we have here?
Oh, six of us. Good enough.
Okay, in the last time this was brought up, we looked at the minutes, and there were several things that had been presented by us or by the neighbors that were not acknowledged in the minutes, not the least of which was the first thing in the package, which is a petition that has been signed, as you will see on the second page, by everybody representing every house on the cul-de-sac, with one exception. There is a rental house, and the owner of that rental house has sent in an email also objecting to the second story. The gist of the objection is, or of the petition, is threefold, essentially. One, neighborhood compatibility. As Carolyn was pointing out, it is a single-story house. And, sorry, it is a single-story neighborhood, and they are proposing a second story in a single-story neighborhood. The original CCNRs no longer obtain. However, all the houses are currently on the cul-de-sac, with the exception of the one that was rebuilt after the T fire, are single-story, with one exception that I will address in just a minute. So if you'd like to, we could take a quick run around the neighborhood. Did you all get up to see the story poles?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody's been up there? Okay, so this can be real fast. I've done this in address order from the right-hand side going in on Las Alturas Circle. The first house, 20, single story. It does have a second lower story behind it. Then that's our house is 30. We don't have any story up or down. We're on a slab. Number 44 is next door to the subject house, It actually sits a little bit below and is kind of at a privacy disadvantage to the house, if particularly if the second story is permitted. Then there's the house itself, and as you can see, it presents a relatively comprehensive, low, integrated design that is quite horizontal. The next one is 33, that goes around the next way. That is also single story. 23 actually sits a little bit below the street. It's a smaller house and very much a single story. I guess you designers can tell me, is this a Cliff Bay? I don't know. If you look to the left of the house in that picture, you'll see that's this one. This one is 23. Okay, if you look right to the
Excuse me, I'm going to need to put it on the screen.
Okay. If you look to the left, you want me to point at it, or can you see that? At the very left side, where the point of the roof goes, you'll see another building. Okay, that is the next house, 15. 15 is the only house that does have a second story. It was built in between the times of the CC&Rs and before this board was organized. There was a significant attempt by the owner to minimize the appearance of the second story, and as you can see, if you looked at that previous picture, the second story is almost at the same height as the house next to it, so that it really doesn't move away from the nature of the neighborhood, but we will say that it is a second story house. And then beyond that is number 9. Again, very significantly just a single story home. It does have a story below it in the back where, and this again, the CC&Rs said, if you want to go down, you can go down. Now this did not have any bump up in the roof because of the terrain. And then the final one is 3. That's another one that has a floor below it. I'm going back to, since you've seen the story poles, I'm going to go back and just put the two side by side, 45 with and 45 without the story poles. And what I see personally is a house with a bump in it. This is a house that's got a pop-up. It looks like a tract home, and quite honestly, if this were to be built on this house, anybody walking by on the street's going to say, that was added later, wasn't it? It just, I'm sorry, is not attractive. I don't know if any of you drove down. Did you drive down to Terrace Road below the house? Anybody go down there? Okay. This is the view from Terrace Road below the house. It significantly, I can take two more people with 4 more minutes, if you don't mind.
How much time do you have? You have a minute 16, please.
Okay. You can see from below, it's also not going to look very attractive on the top of the house there. From a design compatibility standpoint, this house does not make a lot of sense. I filled in at the last meeting, if you could pass those around. I filled in at the last meeting, before the story poles were put up, I did my own drawing of their design and presented this to the board. And now that the story poles are up, I took a look at this, and quite honestly, it matches pretty darn exactly. So that's what it's going to look like. It looks like a trailer with a pop-up on it. It just does not fit for this house. We believe that this is not appropriate both for the neighborhood as a second story, and it's not appropriate for the design of the house. That it's just going to make it look like somebody's gone in there and done, quite frankly, a bad job of remodeling.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker is Henry Freckman.
Yeah.
I'll see if there's anyone else who's here.
It's okay, I'm done.
Okay, Michael Jaffe is the next speaker.
I don't think I need a lot of time. Appreciate you.
You need to speak into the microphone, please. It's being recorded.
Appreciate you taking a moment to hear from me. Obviously, I've signed the petition, and I share the view that it's not compatible. I live at 44 Las Alturas, which is the house just below the grade where this addition is being made, and there are a couple of things. I'm not sure that, I think last time you were sort of unwilling to hear privacy issues. But the truth of the matter is that the developer has given you a sight line from the development down to our house, and it's a complete misrepresentation of what's actually there. I found out about, it's okay. I found out about the story poles because I was in the bathroom and looked up, and there they were. There used to be no problem from the bedroom. Our most intimate rooms face that part, but face that side of the house. But now there's a problem from the bedroom because the large oak tree that used to be there on the property was cut down last year, presumably to avail themselves of views. I don't really know. But that runs to my second point, which is that one of the things this board asked the applicants to do was to consult with people in the neighborhood. And to my knowledge, not one single neighbor has heard one single word, question, query, nothing. They came and talked to me before the last meeting, and the owners came and talked to me as well. But since the last meeting, we haven't heard anything. And so they haven't complied in that sense. And it would seem to me we had offered some possible suggestions, and we heard about the trees, but they took down other big trees, so it didn't seem to me to be an issue. All right. Anyway, that's it. Anything else?
Thank you. Jan Jaffe is our next speaker.
Does anybody else need that? I'm going to reiterate something.
Okay, if you could
Jan Jaffe.
just share with us new information, please.
No, it's just that it's in our most intimate rooms. It looks down in our bedroom and our master bedroom.
Okay.
And nobody came to talk to the neighbors to see if we could all work together.
Okay, thank you. And then Carol Freckman. Okay. All right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Okay. Did we get any further communications?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right. Before I bring it back to the board for questions, where'd David go? Disappeared. I inquired from David to reiterate this board's purview in terms of second floors. Because this area is zoned to allow second floors, typically this board does not have the power to deny a second floor. Now, I understand from the last meeting, which I was not present, that you all conveyed to the applicant that a second floor was not preferable and requested that they restudy it. But I don't believe, and that's why I was waiting for David to get back, I don't believe we have the authority to deny a second floor because it is zoned in such a way. However, I can share with you, given the fact that we have faced this same issue in other neighborhoods within the community, that we certainly have the power to shape, to consider the design, the height, et cetera, of a second floor. But we will probably have a difficult time outright denying a second floor. But I will have David elaborate as soon as he returns. So before we get to the comments, let us go to questions. Who has questions?
I do.
Yes.
Did you consider turning that addition? I guess one of the issues that I may have is that, I mean, I think it's a very modest addition, but somehow that, when you're looking straight on at the house, that linear piece up above, have you ever considered spinning that around, doing something else that's a little more friendly to the street?
We did look at it. Thank you. The existing living room is vaulted. Right now, the kitchen that this is over is not, so we'd be taking out that vaulted living room. Also, just massing-wise, it brings it closer to the street. it brings that mass even closer to the street, and the gable is bigger on that end. And the existing fireplace would be bifurcating, and it'd be cutting that thing right in half.
Okay, so you've looked at that, of course, as architects do. The other question I have for you is, I'm looking here at the site plan, and I see that it does drop off pretty quickly behind the house. Have you looked at alternative areas for the addition without going up to a second story?
Yes, we have, and we were directed to do that last time. And the main area we were looking was off this existing bedroom wing. However, we would have to cut down those 2 mature avocados. It's like a 40-foot tall avocado. It's a fruit-producing tree. And the owner would just rather not do that and rather not get those footings that close to that steep hillside.
I was going to ask you, it looks a little tight there to the top of the slope, and it looks like in the front you've got a setback issue.
That's correct.
Could you take a pencil and, on this site plan, show where the second story is, the roof is?
Sure.
Right here?
Yeah, it's the darker roof.
This piece?
Draw a line around it.
Excuse me. I'm going to, the rules here, guys, so we can conduct a public meeting. This is all being broadcast and recorded. So I'm going to ask the audience to refrain from comments from the audience so that the board can have the conversation. You had your opportunity to make public comment, okay? So the conversation is to the board now. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so the second, that other area to the southwest, I would say it is, yes, is to the south, is a deck that's on top of an existing,
That's right.
to the south.
There are
to
2
the south.
small decks cut in.
No, over here. That's a small deck? What is this over here?
This.
No, I'm pointing right there, yeah, right where,
Yep, that's a second level deck.
that whole thing,
No, just this.
just that little thing.
Yep.
And the rest of it is a existing 1-story roof that's already there.
That's correct.
It's there existing.
That's correct.
Why, then I have, I think this was presented by, why is this showing, is this correct? I mean, this is almost right on top of the other building next door, 44.
Oh, this is the carport of 45.
That's the carport of 45.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm misunderstanding. That's the carport of 45. Show me.
So the carport is right here. This is the carport.
This is the end of the
okay.
street?
Oh, right, okay. Sorry, I thought that was the car of 44 and the house of 44.
We've got one, but the story pole's highlighted on it in yellow. It shows the massing.
No, I'm still, I thought this was 44 here. That's why I'm asking. That's why we have
45. Yep.
That's 45. All that is 45.
This is
Everything-
44.
That's the carport.
Yeah, everything I'm looking right here is all 45.
That's correct. Yeah.
So 44 is
This
not
is
even.
44.
Okay.
So that photograph is basically that.
That's zoomed in on just us, and then ours shows the whole cul-de-sac.
So you're quite a distance away from
Yeah.
How
How
many
many
44.
70 feet. Just shy
70
of 70
feet away.
feet.
Okay. Other
Okay.
questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what's the plate height of the first and second floors?
So it's an existing 8-foot plate. We'd love to get that kitchen volume up to 9, but then the second floor is 8 foot. So it's as low as we can go.
You
Okay.
said that it's 23 feet, the proposed.
To the ridge.
23.6 to the
23
ridge,
feet.
that's correct.
Okay. Other
You're allowed to
questions?
go what height?
25, well,
This zone allows 30. Other questions? Okay. I have some questions. Could you show me the building section, please, again?
Yes.
So a building section through, where's the street? Los Altos is here.
Yeah, I'm gonna see where we're looking.
I'm looking for a section right,
Yeah.
right through here, like that.
I think I don't remember. This is that one.
Okay, which one is which?
Let's see. So this is that one.
Okay, so right now, this is 8 feet here,
That's correct.
okay? So this is 9 feet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and this is 8 feet to where? Right
Plate,
there?
The plate. Yep.
The plate height is 8 feet.
Yep.
Okay. Right, so you basically have 8 feet clear in the kitchen, a foot of structure, and then another 8 feet.
That is correct.
Okay. Right. And then could you walk through for me again the windows from that second level?
Sure. Can you look at a plan first?
No, this is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so north elevation, this is looking, when you say north, that's looking what, towards the mountains?
Towards the mountains.
Okay. This is the west elevation?
This is the street view. Yep. And there is a wall right there, 5-foot entry wall.
Okay, and so this becomes, with this addition, this becomes one solid wall in the same plane, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then the south elevation towards the ocean is these set of windows.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the canyon view to the east towards Carpinteria is this elevation.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, any other questions?
What is this gable here? There, right here?
That's that gable.
That's that gable. Right there.
It's a gable end.
Actually, a
Gable
gable
end.
end.
Yeah.
And this fireplace, you're indicating would be, that fireplace element would be moved up.
Exactly.
Higher.
Okay. Right? Thank you. All right, other questions?
Just a real quickie is, could you tell me what this is?
That's the fireplace we were just talking about.
Oh, that's the
Yep.
chimney of the
That's correct.
fireplace?
That's correct.
Okay.
And
And
then-
that's going to
Go up.
stay
It'll go up
getting
higher.
taller.
Yeah.
I have a question now, just to confirm to our board members. How many of you actually went and saw the story poles? Okay, so we've all been up to see the story poles. Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. Obviously, I think the applicant is here requesting project design approval. We have the option to do that. We have the option not to grant project design approval. We have options to do various things in between those two actions. So let's go to comments. Okay, if nobody's ready, I'm going to, because I may take a little bit of time here. Okay, all of these homes on this particular cul-de-sac were designed in the essence of what we now refer to as the ranch style, developed by Cliff May in the late 40s after the post-war. And they were based on this idea of the Mexican rancho. This is actually an early sketch from Cliff May before he was in the business of designing the Cliff May homes that we now recognize for him. And as he moved along, this entire book is devoted to his practice, his designs, and one of the things that was troubling me about what's being proposed is the fact that irregardless of the applicant's notion that the neighborhood is much larger, unless it's defined by the city of Santa Barbara, the neighborhood is as the neighbors see it and as this board interprets it. And I went, just for reference, from Google Earth, just brought to the attention that this is Los Alturas Road, this is Los Alturas Circle, and all of these homes were built in the same, what we would now refer to as the Cliff May style. So given the nature of how these were built and how they were placed on the land, they are quite different from the homes that we have reviewed, seen, and approved. In fact, 3 of them just here on Los Alturas Road in the last 4.5 years. So I beg to differ with the applicant. The neighborhood is this. by its very nature. It's got a character just unique to Los Alturas Circle. That conversation was well recognized when we most recently approved this home at the corner, which is 2 stories only in the fact that it falls to 2 stories on the ocean side of the elevation. And as I recall, this board agonized. Originally, the applicant had proposed a second floor which faced Los Alturas Circle, and we worked with the designer to have them reconsider, and we ultimately delineated or deleted a second floor elevation that would reflect on Los Alturas Circle so that it would remain from that street to appear as a 1-story element. And ultimately, that's how we gave approval to this project once we were satisfied that the front elevation remained in character with the other single-story homes. So I disagree with the assumption that the neighborhood is bigger. This is a neighborhood that's unique in style, unique in character, and was developed at the same time. Now, just to be clear, I'm a retired senior partner of what is referred to by one of the neighbors in one of the documents presented today from the firm that was established in 1906 that ultimately worked its way into Howell, Arndt, Mosher, and Grant. That was changed much, much later through a whole series of acquisitions, et cetera. So I just want to be clear, there is some history. But having said all of that, the other thing that tells me in looking and researching at Cliff May, because of the nature of what he did, is that there were times in his development of his architecture and his style that ultimately led to the Cliff May houses that we have here in Santa Barbara. We do have some here in it, or not here, but out in Hope Ranch, and then obviously we had some that were emulated by local firms such as Arndt, Mosher, Grant. But in the character and development of that, there were times where second floors were introduced. This is one of his sketches from a Monterey-style residence designed for the Riviera Ranch in Southern California. But the very nature of his design work was the idea that he was able to develop designs that created this large, expansive, low-slung, single-story home. And I'm sorry that the lighting is not good on the TV. But the homes were quite large in some cases. Later on, he developed houses that were much smaller. But there were periods of time where he was able to incorporate a second floor into that. Again, it was based on that ranch-style document. But in essence, many of the homes that he ultimately built, if I can get to it, were similar to this nature and ended up, many of the homes looked like this, where the exterior and the interior were one, using skylights and large expanses of glass on a pitched roof system. So having said that, what I'm looking at today is not a Cliff May design and is not compatible, in my opinion, with the other homes on this street. Now, that's not to say I'm against a second floor. I think that one can design a home on this street with a second floor, but it needs to be done in a very different fashion. The trick that happens with Cliff May homes is he has typically a 3 and 12 pitch, but when he does introduce a second floor, it's tucked down. That top plate is, in some points, less than 8 feet. I think by code you can get down to 7 feet or 7 feet 6 inches to that plate, and then he allows the roof line where the eave line is well hung over the face of that, and where he wants to break up that 2-story element, he does so with a Spanish-style balcony or Monterey design that we see from Monterey, so that the scale of the home drop down dramatically. So I think there's a way for you to get where you need to be, but it isn't this design. The other thing is that you've got to address this fireplace. By the very nature of what you're producing here is it causes that fireplace to have to be raised. I think if you study shifting this element to some other portion of that roof area, you could achieve a second floor, and by using the plate height scenario, getting it down to 7 feet, 7'6", that still allows you to have a cathedral ceiling in that second room. The volume can be very large. You tuck that down. The other thing that occurs that traditionally one sees from where all of our architecture comes from, this idea of romanticizing Spanish architecture, that's not the greatest example, is that the windows are kept tucked right up into below that plate height. Because typically that's how one would have seen Spanish architecture. Right here, see how close those are proportioned? They're shoved right up. That's because I dare guess that when they actually got this built, that plate height is at 7 feet 6 inches. Typically, window plate heights in residential structures are at 6 feet 8 inches. So that tucks it way down. The other thing that drops that profile down is dropping that eave down. So I don't really want to get into a lengthy architectural lesson here, but I think you need to go back and work on this thing some more, get a second floor that would be compatible. And then the second comment I would make, you have a whole room here of folks that are very unhappy. You need to get your owner on the ground and out here and meet with these folks and sit down and get this thing settled. Otherwise, you're going to be back here several times, or you're going to be sitting in front of the city council. I'd rather get it solved right here by getting a design that's much more compatible with the nature of the Cliff May inspired designs that were done in the 1950s and 1960s on this street. Okay? I think that's where you need to go. Those are my comments.
May I follow up on that?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Chair Sweeney. I am not opposed to a second story, and the reason I'm going to explain that is because I went up, and as I'm driving in, and when I very first saw the neighborhood, of course, my first reaction is, oh my God, no, there's no way. But then, as I continued down to the end of the cul-de-sac, I thought if there's going to be a second, well, clearly there are second stories already, so the precedent has been set, that at the end of the cul-de-sac is the exact place where it should be. It makes the most sense. It's like that's, like you said, as far as the dispersing of 2 stories within that neighborhood, it made ultimate sense. However, I did not care for the shape of the second story either. I think it's too blocky. Don't think it's appropriate to the architecture at all either. So I agree completely with Chair Sweeney on that. A little redesign, but not necessarily am I opposed to a second story.
Other comments?
Well, I do agree with Chair Sweeney. But I just do want to say that the second stories that exist, they're not second stories for the street. The second story goes below the grade, and that's the case in most of the house. So I just want to make that clear.
Well, except for this one, excuse me, but there is one that is second story.
In one of the houses, not in both of them.
This one right here is second story to the street. So
This one is second story.
But the issue, I think what Member Pierce is pointing out, Denise, is that, yes, that's a second floor, but it's a combination of the landscaping and the fact that it's on the downside of the street. So again, and I'll say this again, as I said several times, your architecture is a combination of your architecture and your landscaping. The final composition of what one sees from the street is the combination of both of those. But I think your design sketches need to reflect that. And I think that whatever modification you may be thinking about making to the landscape plan needs to be incorporated into what you're proposing. Sorry, go ahead. Okay. Other comments?
I just would like to say that as a board, we are volunteers, and we are really trying our best to honor what we have to work with. And we can't say no second story on this street because it's not our purview to do that. So I appreciate everybody coming, and I appreciate Mr. Sweeney's comments. I think I agree with most everything that everybody said here. So we'll be probably revisiting this again.
I would add one additional advice. As you begin to understand where you're placing window openings, is that you reconsider where those openings are in relationship to potential view corridors to other homes. Now, the city attorney has advised us that we're not obligated to guarantee privacy issues. But this board is keenly aware that privacy is always an issue, even if we have homes that are 60 or 70 or 80 feet away, because on some occasions, looking at windows present problems. So I think you need to walk that through, and then as you walk that through and come up with a solution, that solution needs to be shared with the immediate neighbors so they understand where the view corridors may or may not be. And sometimes it's just a matter of moving a window a few feet one way or the other that would solve somebody's privacy issue. Okay. Any other comments? Jamie?
No, I don't have a comment.
Okay. So the chair would look for a motion.
Make a motion. I move to continue this project to the full board indefinitely with the following comments. To study making this addition to the home, whether it's first or second floor, more compatible with the neighborhood, the homes on this street. Thinking in Cliff May architecture style. The owners need to meet with the neighbors, and window locations need to be considered in relationship to the other neighbors. A landscape Plan also needs to come back with you.
Okay. Okay, your motion on the floor. Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Conversation. I would encourage you when you come back to give us some building and site sections at an 1/8-inch scale so we really understand. Sections are key to developing any design. So those sections will explain to us and others how this proposed design relates to the streetscape and to the adjoining neighbors in relationship to your site. So I think that's really important, if you would, please. Okay. Any other conversation to the motion? Staff, any other issues?
No.
Anyone else? Okay. Chair will call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? So carried. We'll see you back here when you're ready.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave these.
Got to see.
Okay.
These are the only copies for those who can.
Okay.
What's your name?
Yep.
Jared, I'm not going to take your, what's your last name?
I just need to get these people off.
Hey, excuse me. If you could clear the room, we have to keep our meeting going. If you have conversations, hold them outside. Thank you.
I thought so too. You got crazy.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 5, 626 Alston Road, please.
Yep, too late now. Maybe we have it.
Oops, what's all this?
Thanks.
Oh, is this your stuff? I think that's yours,
I
yes.
brought that up.
Okay. Okay, all this goes away now, right?
I think this is all
That's all
part of
here.
that.
Okay, we must be waiting for a good one.
And is this the latest? This is Alston, good. Okay,
That goes back to that.
over there.
Okay, this is item number 5, 626 Alston Road. This is here for a third concept review. Comments only. Project still requires an environmental assessment. Project was last reviewed on March 21st. Excuse me.
Excuse me?
Excuse me. Jared, can you guys move your conversation out of the room, please? Thank you. Third concept review, comments only. Project requires an environmental assessment. Project was last reviewed on March 21st, 2016. Denise, before I have you read our last action, I'm going to have our applicants introduce themselves, please.
I'm Jose Luis Esparza, architect.
Roy Greenwald, and I'm the representative for the Family Trust.
Okay, thank you. Before we read, David, a question on the project action at this point. The environmental assessment has not been completed yet?
This project needs an archaeological study before this project can receive a project design approval.
Okay, so that's the environmental part. Okay, Denise, if you could read our last action, please.
Yes. The motion, we continued the project indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. Number 1, the style of the architecture is appropriate for the neighborhood. However, reevaluate the design of the house and study the consistency and coherence of different architectural elements such as windows and columns. Number 2, study the placement of the fireplaces so that they are more consistent with the location of the adjacent roofs. Number 3, the board cannot support the locations of the garages in 2 different locations. Number 4, the board will not support a roof deck. Number 5, the board recommends the architect research and study work by the following architects: Bertram Goodhue, Wallace Neff, George Washington Smith, James Osborne Craig, to help support and inform the design of this home. Number 6, return with site sections. Number 7, revisit the footprint of the house in relationship to the site contours and adjacency to the northerly property at 612 Alston Road, and study the placement and orientation of the garage elements. The board feels that the driveway approach to garages will not work. Action, Miller Pierce, 700, motion carried.
Yeah. Thank you. If you could share with us how you've addressed those comments, please.
Yes, I will show you how we heard your comments.
Which one are you using, this one?
Either one. You need to speak. It's on. It is on.
It is on. You just need to speak into the
into it.
microphone.
Speak that.
I will go by line item by line item to show how we've responded to the comments. As far as the redesign of the windows and architectural elements, so we've changed the design. We no longer have a detail. We've got an overhang. Still have the hip roofs except for over our entry to emphasize and indicate entry. We've changed the fireplaces, and we've also eliminated the second-story element for a more cohesive architecture. The columns we've changed all to square columns with a soft arch. Previously, we had a combination of columns that were in clash with each other. The roof, that was number 1. The roof was redesigned. We've gone with, like I said, with hip roofs to minimize the mass, except for our entry. And what we're doing with the entry is we're doing a volume space that goes through the building, and then a picture window at the end that looks as an axis with the view. If I can show you on the site plan what I mean by that. So when you come in, you're looking through the building at the view. We've redesigned the floor plan. We had we had some elements that were not working with each other. When we took the second story element and we took the single car garage out, it provided an opportunity to redesign the spaces. So now we come in and our living space is to the left, kitchen, garage. So now when you come into the garage, it's in proximity to the kitchen. We've got our laundry, powder room for the living space, off the living space, and then we have the 2 bedrooms. And this is the space that we had above the garage, which is we're calling it a library. It could be used as a bedroom, as a 4th bedroom. And then we come down the stairs because our site slopes down to the master bedroom and master bath. So I feel that it's now more the flow of the house is better, because when you come in, you're branching off to the different uses from this foyer instead of hallways that don't really coordinate, or you're not going into the living room to go into the rest of the house. As I mentioned, item number 3 was the 1-car garage. As I mentioned, that was eliminated. And number 4 was a roof deck. As you can see, we no longer have a roof deck. All second floor elements were eliminated. The roof deck was here. Now we have just a hip roof over the master bath. And here's our building height is 29.11 3/4, which is under the view corridor of 280. And if we look at the site plan, our view corridor cuts right over that master. So, this small portion is right under that view corridor, but then we have the hip roof that even lowers that that height. It was suggested to study different architects, Bertram, Goodhue, Wallace Neff, George Washington Smith, and James Osborne Craig, and it was a good suggestion. After studying those architects, one thing became clear is that they had a cohesive architecture with different architectural elements, but working together, and that's what I feel that we've achieved in the redesign. And although the different styles had different elements, we decided to go with this style. The overhangs seem to fit a little bit better for this style, reducing the apparent roof height. We did go with a 10-foot plate in the living areas, 9-foot plate in the bathroom. And because this is terracing down, we did a 12-foot plate in the master. The site sections, page number 7. Let me show you the regular sections first. So this is cutting through the entry and looking towards this is the archway into that hallway that leads to the garage and to the powder room, laundry room. And this will be an archway that leads from the foyer into the living room. So when you come in, picture window, out to the view. I cut two site sections, all the way from the site, all the way through Alston. The Section 8 cuts through our neighbor's property here, and this is the view corridor height. As you can see, our master bath is under that height. Their elevation is about 286, so it's considerably higher than the top of our roof, and I believe that's the reason why they chose that view corridor height. And our neighbors across the street on Alston are considerably higher at 316. And, before they could see, have issues with building height, they would have issues with neighbors, the neighbors that are already there. And this is a cut going through our entry and driveway. These would be our gates, and then this is Alston. So as you can see, it's set back, and this is our neighbor's finished floor where they sit, and even they are at a their finished floor is higher than our roof, the top of our roof.
Go ahead.
There was a question regarding the garages and how they are located. So what we did with the garage is we rotated the garage to face the driveway, and it's on the setback on this property line, so that you're coming into the garage. So this faces the driveway, so when you come in, you'll drive in. The turnaround for the fire truck is set up as a hammerhead, so they can go here, back up, and leave. I know that was a question, and paving was reduced in the driveway. The extra space that by turning the garage, we had a little bit of extra space, which we're using for our mechanical. We're going to put the water here in the furnace there, go up into the attic. This area is going to be all flat ceilings. This is our main space with volume, so that when you come in, you're into this large volume, and then as you proceed to the other rooms, ceilings come down. And that concludes my presentation. I believe the landscape plan does show the hammerhead turnaround, so you can see.
Okay.
And that was also revised to match the revisions.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to the audience, I do have some speakers. Do we have any comments from staff?
No comments, although we do have some additional correspondence to share.
Green garden.
Okay, I'm going to, and is this from the last hearing or from today?
The one with the blue note clipped to it was from after the last...
after the board meeting? Or
after we reviewed the project. Okay. And the one on the top, I think we got today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have two speaker slips. Valerie Forscher?
Yeah.
If you'll come and sit right there. I'm going to have you start in just a moment, but I want to take a moment to see if I may not read all this. They're fairly short. The correspondence we received after the last meeting was Barbie Shard. We'd like the board to know that Patrick Marina, the only neighbor who spoke and stated all was fine, and he was the most impacted. He is the salesman who sold the property to the owners. He's very good friends with the contractor. We feel very unfairly represented at this meeting. We took place over spring break with many of the neighbors, including ourselves, most impacted, were out of town. I have another one that was received today for Barbara and John Ireland. We live at 1610 Alston Road, next to the property, 626. We have reviewed the plans for the house, patios, and appreciate it has been scaled down since the last meeting. However, we feel that it's still quite massive for the neighborhood. We are sorry we couldn't stay for the meeting, as I had to take care of my grandchildren. Okay. And we also received, I think we all received correspondence over the weekend and this morning from Mullen and Hensel on behalf of the Shouds, who are the neighbors immediately to the Alston Road side of the property that have the...
What is a Mullen and Hensel?
Mullen and Hensel are attorneys.
Attorney.
Okay. And they forwarded with that document, you can get a copy of the document from staff. They forwarded that document with the view easement agreement that's attached. They did have, I think, appears to be 7 bullet points of concern. The first one is the view corridor easement, concerned about making sure the project, including landscaping, doesn't interfere with the corridor. They're requesting that story poles be erected as a part of the process. They're also requesting city personnel verify project heights at appropriate times throughout the project. They also requesting the height of the home at the master bedroom and bath locations be lowered to ensure compatibility with the view easement. Landscape plan should be carefully considered to ensure trees are of type and locations that, as they grow, will not interfere with the recorded view easement or general view corridor. Basically, the topography and landscaping are consistent with the neighborhood and the view corridor. They also request that the applicant consider adding a wall along the driveway to help abate noise between the entry drive and their property. So those are the 3 written correspondence we've received to date. And Valerie, you have 2 minutes to address the board, please.
Yes. I'm a local architect retained by the Shands, the same neighbors that are immediately above this property. And first, they were unable to be here today. Their son's graduating on the East Coast. So they wanted me to let you know how much they appreciate the changes that you've made. They are substantial in terms of moving the house back away from the view corridor, lowering it, the one-story nature of it. That's very much appreciated by them. So the process is working its way through. That's good. And also the fact that the public spaces are away from the view corridor. But there is concern that view corridor is at 280 and the height of your roof within it is at 279, 11 inches and 3/4. That just doesn't leave any room for construction. Yeah, that's so on the edge of precision that they feel that it should, you could have one more step down or even lower your plate by 6 inches and just have a little bit of leeway there for the actual construction process and the grading. They also would really like to have certified story poles to see how this all sits on the property. And there's a landscape designer here to speak as well about concern about some of these trees. We don't know what they are, but they're fully in the view corridor. And these palm trees here that seem that they will get very tall and be up into the view. Also, in the site section, there's not a clear depiction of the retaining walls. There's a lot of grade change and steps and walls in all these patios. So it'd be good to know more about how high up above the natural grade that is and how much of a plinth it's creating that, it does impact the people above. So it seems like it should be part of the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last speaker I have is Pat Brody.
Pat Brody, also work for the Shands as landscape design and have reviewed the project. I would also like to address the view corridor, and I don't see what these trees are in this area, but they look like big trees, and they're right in the view corridor, as well as the lower section where they show palm trees. A good portion of the Shands house and living area is adjacent to the driveway, and they are proposing, according to these pictures, lavender and some trees, and I feel that we need...
You need to point over here on this
Oh,
one, because it's on television, I'm sorry.
There's a pointer here, if you'd like to use
There's
it.
a pointer in
I
here
can use
somewhere.
this.
Right over there.
Oh, here it is.
All along here.
You want to use
The official pointer. All along this area is adjacent to the Shands living areas, and I feel that if they are willing to construct a wall, that would be great, but if not, there needs to be a buffer of screening. The Shands already have screening, but they are very concerned about their privacy and about noise.
May I say something with all due
Just make a note and I'll allow you to talk.
Hedging or some type of dead planting along there would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else in the public wishing to speak on this issue? Okay, the chair will close public comment and bring it back to the board, and I'll have you comment as soon as I get some questions from the board. So let's go to questions first.
Okay. May I
Yes,
start?
Denise.
So do we have any idea that there is nothing marked here as to what species are? I think this is quite conceptual at this point.
Yes.
I would certainly be very interested to know what the species are and to make sure that indeed any trees that are within that view corridor are kept low enough to not impede it. I'm thinking he may have to rethink the palm trees down here on the lower terrazza. But if maybe next meeting you could bring the actual landscape plan that shows us what your intentions are there with the trees.
What are these, right?
That would be our.
They don't know
Are
yet.
these palms?
It's just conceptual.
And this is, if you look at this on the section there, if you've been to the site and walked down here, these are stones piled here on their property.
This is not on, this is on their property.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's why I said it's on their property. This picture here is depicting some idea of what this might look like, I guess, standing
Looking
that way,
that way,
looking
yeah.
that way. So these appear to be that array of trees here, and that there's some kind of tree at the end of this viewpoint. I'm assuming that's what's intended. or the
Denise,
concept is here.
where was the palm trees you were referring to?
Down in that lower terrazza area.
Oh, down there, okay.
To finish my question, oh gosh, I just lost my thought train, but, shoot. It would be very helpful if the view corridor was somehow depicted here. Is it on any of the plans?
The site plan.
The site plan. So this very first plan here.
Let's see these two dash lines here.
So that one and this way. Okay, so those definitely are going to be within that view corridor.
Yeah,
So
the courtyard is there.
yeah, so that's very important that we know what those species are. Okay, thank you. That's all my only question.
Other questions?
Oh, no, not a question.
This view corridor is there's nothing that
It's
can...
an easement.
It's an easement. Nothing
So-
can interrupt it, not even natural...
As I understand it, I was going to ask the staff in a moment a question, but as I understand it, no, nothing can.
Even 50 years from now, trees that grow up cannot be in that view corridor.
That are on this property. Because the property, at some point, based on the documents presented, this and this property were one.
And
they sold it off, and then as a result, they made an agreement with whoever bought this property had to maintain this view corridor in perpetuity. At least that's the way I read it. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's been a while since I visited this site, so I need to have my memory refreshed. So at the street level, the property, there's a lot a lot of eucalyptus trees and tall trees. Is that going to be changed, or?
If I can address that right now by looking at the landscape plan.
And also, while you're answering the question, maybe you could answer the grading. There seems to be a lot of grading, and I'm just wondering how that is, because as I remember it, the lot kind of
Sets down into
it's
it's well below.
So,
I don't remember how far below, but it's well below Alston. Now, addressing these trees here, and by the way, the palm trees, most of the palm trees are out. I don't remember about these, but there are no palm trees in here. And as far as the Shams representative had asked, this is all on their property. Not this, but in here. And in here, it's all buffered already with, they planted bamboo, which is about 30, 40 feet high. And then there is a grove from the street, or citrus trees from the street, all the way down to here. And I don't know which one of these is the eucalyptus. And then there's two pine trees that are, I don't know, 60 feet, 50 feet. So any of this is already using the word buffered. These are all plantings that to be mostly ornamental because this driveway is long, and yet this will be addressed as coming down to the driveway, and all of these where the driveways are, these are all permeated, so the water will pass through.
so there's a gate.
The gate's up here.
Right, and are the eucalyptus trees going to stay, or are you?
I don't think
There are no eucalyptus trees there.
There are eucalyptus. There's one here, which we
Are
have.
the tall trees that are by the street?
No, there are no.
Go on.
If you go out to the site, you will see there are no tall trees. There are good-sized trees, but there are no eucalyptus trees. And the only thing you can see of this site is just right here. You can't see this site from Alston Road.
Yeah, she's right. There's a eucalyptus tree
There's
somewhere in
eucalyptus
here,
right there.
and that one may have to come down, not because of the building, but it doesn't look like it's.
Left.
Yeah, it has a lightning strike in it. Stuff
There's
like
the view from the street. That's the entry drive. So there are no eucalyptus trees. There are taller trees as you go further down.
And then, so the grading, how does that work?
There's the grading right there.
He showed the cut, he showed the site.
There's the grading.
He showed it. He showed it. Right here.
I mean, as you can see in the overall, presentation
That's
today,
pretty
we
low.
heard what you said, and, we spent a lot of time and effort, using what you said and using it to our benefit, and, to make a home that's going to be, not only livable, but, pretty and useful in terms of the floor plans and things like that.
Okay, let's go to further questions.
I do have just a quick question. So, they're using the same palm symbol along the drive, but then yet they have a picture of like olives. So I'm assuming that.
Well, yeah, we don't have, this is just conceptual, so we don't know
Okay.
anything yet.
Right.
You may want to, in our comments, you may want to
we'll
contribute some suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Then barring other questions, let's go to comments. Who has comments?
You go?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, I think it's a great improvement for of the house. I think it's a good job. I think you dealt with the garage in a good way that makes it much more feasible. I'm glad that you're one story and that you listened. Really appreciate that you took our comments and turned them into a much nicer plan for the house. And look forward to the landscape plan so that we can see really what's going to be, suggested for the view corridor in particular, but for everything.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job of now fitting the house to the lot. whereas the house was just an afterthought for the lot. And it makes good use of the contours and your view, and it saves their gives their corridor, it drops everything down. Yeah, the landscaping is probably one of the houses. The house is nice. The landscape is going to even improve it even more. It's going to look really nice. Yeah.
Other comments, Jamie?
Yes. It seems, I agree, that I think the house looks great. You've done a really nice job in your research and bringing it around. So I hope that that continues with the landscape plan, because this is a definite style of architecture, and I think you can go with that in the landscape plan as well. And so some of these pictures that you have really conflict with that.
Some of the what?
Some of the
Photographs.
the photographs
On the landscape.
in your landscape, they really kind of.
I can answer some. These were again, these were conceptual, and,
Right.
and the landscape architect, who's no longer at Santa Barbara, but he was here for many years. He's now teaching at the University of Washington in their department. He heads the department up, and he used some of these were for the, I can't remember I think it's 42 Remetto Road, which is right down the hill, and it's a 3-acre estate, I think, 3 or 2.5 acre estate. So he had used some of these just for conceptual.
Right. Well, there's some modern elements that you have in here that don't really fit. So, I'm just saying you want to research that just as much as you research your home.
It's kind of hard coming from this board and putting.
I'm not going.
Sorry.
So then the other thing is, you've got this neighbor with this bamboo running along there. In some ways, it might be nice for you to have a curb or something to keep that bamboo from encroaching in. I don't know how close it is, but bamboo can be pretty invasive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments?
That means we kill bamboo.
Oh, yeah, one more.
Yes.
The plate heights were mentioned in there, and I always think it is really interesting to have, a change in heights, the undulation. And so I'm going to defer to you architects about that, but I think that was a good point. Maybe there needs to be more of that.
Joe, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to come from in front of this board, and everybody does it. They have conceptual things of what they think is, and it's like going through a magazine. I want this and I want that, and they put it on the drawings, and then we look at it, and it throws us way off. It really does.
Are you talking about the architecture?
No, I'm talking about the landscape. I'm talking about the landscape picture. Yeah.
Okay.
And I like Jamie. I like your idea about. Your architecture is, like I said before, it's really nice now, and it completely changed from what you had before. You had something very palatial, very strong, and it didn't fit the lot. But you have a chance here of maybe changing a little, and maybe putting some volume ceilings in, and rather than having it all flat. I mean, you could do something a little bit more unique and nice, even better than what you've done. You've really done a nice job, but even better than what you have, to give it a feeling that you had before that we turned down because it was too massive and too palatial and too. That's all I have to say. But it's nice. I like it.
Did you have another comment?
Yeah, I did actually. One of the things that I wanted to say too is that what I really appreciate, and it may make it so that this bottom little terrace with the palm trees is low enough. I don't know what the kind of palm trees those are going to be, but it does step down quite a bit from the level of the house. So you're coming down. I'm trying to count how many steps here, but quite a number of steps. So you're way down here at this little terrace. So that should really help with picking out the right species, so that it doesn't go too far up. But I think that's a point we need to all recognize, is that they are taking that way, way, way down. That's way down.
Don't hold me to it, but if I remember, from the view corridor, which is at 280, down over here, this is what you're talking about?
Yes.
now? That's 40 feet, I think that's at 230 or something? Yeah. I don't remember, it's pretty far down.
So it's way down there, that's okay, that's okay, I couldn't.
260?
No, this is 214, that line's 214.
214.
It's dropping. So we're down 214 from the finished floor of the house is
270.
270, so you're
Yeah,
50 feet down.
that's like way down there,
Yeah.
so probably,
Dropping quite fast.
yeah, it keeps going down, down, so that little terrace is probably gonna be okay, 50 feet down, geez.
Okay. Other comments?
One
Yes.
other thing is you might want to put the view corridor on the landscape
Yeah,
plan.
that's what I was gonna ask for too.
We'll definitely get it on
Yeah,
there.
that'd be great.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair?
yes.
One thing we haven't talked about is story poles.
Oh, right.
How does the board feel about that?
Well, I'll make a comment in a minute.
Okay.
But, others?
I'll weigh in on the story poles. I don't see the need for, I think that he's already presented from this presentation, we can see that it's well below the view corridor. Well below, I guess you made the comment that it's just at the view corridor level. One-story homes, I don't typically feel need story poles. I think it's we can pretty much see the picture here, but it's my opinion.
Okay, other comments? Okay, I'm going to go to mine. First of all, I kind of echo some of the comments made by my colleagues. You've come a long ways from where you were last time, so I really appreciate that. I came today with, if you don't have this book, I suggest you get it, because I think it has a lot of what you were directed to look at, and I think you took your lesson well. There are some things on the drawings that still quite aren't there yet, but I think the overall approach is where we need it to be. One of the comments, the reason I have this photograph up here is that one of the tricks, so to speak, that Reginald Johnson and Smith and that list that you were given is typically in Andalusian architecture where it came from outer Spain. The second floors were relatively compact and their plate heights were relatively low. And notice how the window proportions against the eave are fairly tight. That's because typically in residential, at least the way we do it here in this country, the height of those windows are usually at 6 foot 8 inches. And for a lot of people, they typically do an 8-foot plate height for that second floor. I'm going to suggest that you have an opportunity in looking at some of your proposed elevations. I think I agree with my landscape colleague. There's an opportunity here to give a little bit more variety to this, and also I think it gives some credence to make the property owner to the mountainside of you a little bit more comfortable with their view corridor. And I think there's an opportunity here to take, I think it's this wing, no, excuse me, it's this wing. I'm looking at the house this way. This wing and lowering the plate height here, getting that eave to tuck over the top of these windows. And one of the things that occurs, that happens, let's see if I can get my finger on it, is that if you do that, you have the opportunity, particularly in the bathroom, where, if the bath is tucked into one side, if it's a bath, people aren't, unless they're the in and out function, they're not standing up in there. So it brings the scale of that room down. You've got an opportunity to play this trick where you do a volumetric ceiling, but yet the eave line is really low from the outside. So the perception from the outside of the house is it's dropped down. I think you have the opportunity to do that over here in this wing. That would get the scale, I think, appropriately dropped and automatically addresses the concern of the letter we got from the attorney. So I think that's important. In general, I think this approach is very good. I think it's gotten where it needs to be. I'm just going to suggest you restudy some of the shapes here. This proportion right now probably might look a little better if you did that. So that this got a little thicker, okay? And these little windows don't all have to fall in line, because I think that goes into a powder room.
Yes.
And you might think about, if you really do want to keep that plate height in that room where it wants to be, then maybe the windows need to shape a little, where you get this relationship of the eave to the top of the windows much closer to the trick that all these other guys pulled when they were doing these designs. The same thing goes with you would never probably see these shallow arches like this, because there's always some beef. Remember when those arches were built, this typically the architecture would have been built from stone or adobe or brick, and then it's plastered. So the top of the arch would have some heft onto it. So, it's probably going to be something more like this, and that the columns, if they're square, might want to be a little thicker so that the proportions work. But you're getting close. So now you just have to kind of play with. You probably wouldn't see a big broad arch like that. It might be cut into two, because I'm looking at this in an oblique angle. But I think you're close. So now you're getting down to the detail part. But I think the general approach is good. I think the reshifting the garage is a good location. I think the idea of, yes, doing the section down this promenade of the landscape plan is really important. So I understand it, but I think it would be very helpful for others to understand how this, so doing a section through here and then including the general shapes of what you're proposing as the tree heights.
Okay.
So we can all see that. One of the challenges here that we kind of experience basically from this area of Santa Barbara over into Montecito, if you look at early pictures of these areas before man came and planted here, the landscaping was confined by sycamore and oaks that usually followed the water course. Okay, and this is the head of a water course. That was probably why it hasn't been developed until now, because it's a water course that eventually heads down towards the ocean. So the grouping of trees were fairly tight, and yet when man came here, and particularly in Montecito, they came and they started plunking down palm trees, et cetera, and you look at the canopy of this neighborhood, it's got all kinds of stuff. But if I confine it just to this property, I think you might go a long ways to maybe eliminating the language of the palm trees as a predominant element. I think palm trees in a certain concentrated area might be appropriate. They may not have to be big, tall ones. Certainly down here, they could be a different species type. And I'm not a landscape architect, so I couldn't tell you what the type should be. But there's all kinds of shapes. So when we speak about palm trees, we have these big guys that we see along the beach, and then we have palm trees that look like that are squat and come down here and have nice big
There aren't
trunks.
any of these.
Yeah. So
there aren't any of these.
So somewhere between those two, I think you have it, and maybe you just concentrate. You have the other opportunity. It's kind of suggested by some of these photographs that he's beginning to create garden types.
That's what they are.
So an English garden or whatever. So perhaps a different garden type for this area that would assure you the ability to meet the easement requirement for the view corridor, but yet create a garden type down here was appropriate. Maybe this needs to be more like some of the areas at I can't think, Madame Lewinsky, Lotus Land, where it's more succulents and it's some other kind of garden type that kept it low, and then maybe at the edge of the easement you have some higher elements to give privacy to obviously this part of the house from those property owners, because privacy works two ways. So I think in the end, coupled with where you are with the architecture, I think what I'm hearing from my other colleagues, that the landscaping palette and design is going to be formidable to kind of get you to a complete package. A couple of just small details, because they'll come up. Trash, on driveway. And I think under our certain circumstances, people still have to haul their trash things out to the street. So you might think about, where's a trash enclosure going to go? And as I recall, you can't put them in the setback, so you kind of need to maybe explore that. lighting down that driveway, lighting at the front. We'd like to see what that looks like. That's pretty important. Obviously, dark sky, but at the other hand, this is a long, dark driveway, and people, need to feel secure being able to come into their property. So how you solve that problem is going to be of interest. One of the things I noticed, and this is just, I'm being real picky now because you've kind of moved a long ways. Yeah, to be picky. I noticed, unless I missed it, there's no window to the morning sun in the kitchen.
Yes, that was intentional.
Okay. I don't know. I like morning sun in my kitchen, but you guys can play with that. Okay. With regards to, and there may be a view issue down the hill or whatever, but morning sun in the kitchen might be something you'd like. With regards to story poles, I tend to agree with my colleagues that a one-story, given where you've set it in this site, where the design now sits versus where it was the last time, I don't think we really need to go there because they're expensive. And if we did, we'd probably make you do the A level of story poles, which would really get expensive. So we'll need to see how the legal represented couple feels about that. But I think if you can demonstrate by lowering the piece they were concerned about on the bathroom using some of the tricks that I've shared with you, that hopefully discussion would go away, and that we get a landscape plan that kind of assures them that we're not going to have big trees growing up in their view corridor. Then I think we could probably be pretty well justified not requiring story poles. Okay, other comments?
House is exciting. Yeah. I mean, you could do volume ceilings through there and different vaults and.
I think you got all the tools to make it work. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Other comments? Okay. We could give this. We have several options here. We could continue it with comments. We could give it project design approval, which then triggers a appeal process.
Actually, Mr. Chair, we can't give it project design approval.
We can't?
Yet.
Oh, because, I'm sorry, we still got the archaeological report. I'm sorry, I forgot. We've been at this so long. Okay, so all we can do is really give a comment. But if we choose to, you can certainly identify the positive things that you indicate by the design and also things that may be lacking or still need to be addressed.
Question.
Yes.
Before you vote. It was probably our misunderstanding. We were, ready, willing, and able to have the environmental reports that were necessary, and we were waiting for something from the office. We just got told today that we didn't have to wait. So if we can move these reports up, can we get some kind of a fast track to get an approval?
Not that I know of. I'm looking at staff.
The ARC report itself will be a process to go through Historic Landmarks Commission, so it's
Say
all.
Again, please?
The archaeological report will be something that will need to be reviewed by the Historic Landmarks Commission, so that's its own separate track. Yeah.
And so apparently until they act, we can't act. And the Historic Landmarks Commission will look at that report, and they meet every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks, and you have to get on their agenda, you have to go to them, and you have to come back to us. Sorry, we don't have control over that process. But we can indicate today where we think this project is. Okay, so the chair would look for a motion.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. Move to continue the project indefinitely, 2 weeks?
We have to be indefinitely.
Indefinitely, that's right, because of the report. To the full board with the following comments. The board really appreciates the direction you've taken with the architecture, and we look forward to seeing and request a full landscape plan with a section coming through the house and down all the way to the lower terrace with trees depicted and their heights. We would like that view corridor to also be delineated on the landscape plan. We'd like the applicant to study the archways as they relate to the columns in the on the elevation. Which elevation was that? Let's see. That was the south elevation, and perhaps beef them up a bit. We'd like the applicant to study dropping the plate height on the, this is the master here? The master bedroom suite, and consider the volumetric roof ceiling in that area. We would also like the applicant to study the entryway and widening the entry portico to give that a little more heft and to keep it more in keeping with the Spanish Andalusian style. Have I covered everything?
Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. Ms. Pierce?
The trash?
Oh, and to please delineate the area that you will be putting the trash.
My clients don't have any trash.
They don't have any other problem, neither do I.
Is second okay with that?
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Chair, what about, does the maker of the motion want to apply good neighbor guidelines and request that they run this by their neighbor after they've made the next changes?
Oh. Well, we always like to see people apply the good neighbor guidelines.
We've tried to, quote, apply the good neighbor, but I can, it may be personal, and we've tried to stay within the confines of the views and all the things that were in the agreements before the property became, got into our hands. But my instinct tells me that this went far beyond that.
There's some bad blood. Oh.
So I think what they're suggesting is just to make sure that you've let the neighbors know the plans are available to look at.
Not a problem.
Okay.
That's it, great. So
Right?
I'll incorporate that into my
That's your motion.
my
Is that
motion.
acceptable to the second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So carried. Okay, we'll see you back here when you're done with the process at the HLC.
We have the comments, and I'll put them with
Let's
the.
see. I think I got everything that belongs to this over in there. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry.
One
They're
more,
there.
yeah, we got one more.
Okay, we're going to go to item number 6.
Oh, my, this
Away
did
for
go
an
longer
hour
than I
behind.
thought. That one went
No, not
long,
right
didn't
on
it?
time. This is
You fall asleep out there?
456 Caneo Road. This is here for third concept review. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. Project was last reviewed on January 25th, 2016. And in a moment, Denise will have our comments from our last meeting.
Okay.
These are the one before. this is
Wait,
this
let
one.
me have
we
them
have to wait
introduced
for-
and then get a little comment.
She's not Denise.
Okay, if you all could introduce yourselves, please.
I'll go first. I'm Jessica Harlan with Barefoot Design Landscape.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a correction before we start.
Yes.
This item is supposed to be here for final review, not concept review, as it was marked wrong on the agenda. They're requesting final approval, but the project needs to comply with Tier 3 SWIMP. So it's comments only, and they can continue to consent for review of comments.
Okay, thank you. So Denise, could you just read our last comments?
Yes, with pleasure. The motion was as follows. Project design approval was given with the finding that the neighborhood preservation ordinance criteria have been met as stated in subsection 2269050 of the City of Santa Barbara Municipal Code, and continued indefinitely to the full board with comments. Number 1, the board has positive comments regarding the project's consistency and appearance, neighborhood compatibility, quality of architecture and materials, landscaping, and good neighbor guidelines. Number 2, the board finds the proposed 67% FAR acceptable. James and Woolery, 700, motion carried. And a 10-day appeal period was announced.
Thank you. So if you could share with us where you are at this point.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Michael Holliday. We're the architects for the project. This is Sean Lentz, who's the project manager, and Jessica, who's our landscape architect. So we're here for final approval, and this was the project that we spent quite a bit of time on. Appreciate all the positive comments. So we're just going to, it's essentially the same design that's been approved originally, and we want to just sort of walk you through the package, focusing mostly on the architectural, sort of fenestration of the building.
lots of sheets of drawings in here.
Title.
Gotta go. Title 24.
Yeah, so much.
Here's the landscape plan. Actually, here's a site plan, and we'll show you the landscape plan in just a second. So essentially, this is exactly what you saw in the preliminary presentation where we got project design approval. So we're essentially building right on the footprint of the existing house, existing driveway to remain, existing area there. We've integrated the house and made a lot of significant improvements, which we think was part of the whole process that you guys helped us with. Basically, on the ground floor, it's a floor plan, an oversized garage. We've got all of our storage and everything back off, significantly off the site. Then you walk up that center stairway area, as well as the front entry in the front here. This shows the actual garage floor plan. There's a front entry. This is the first floor plan. It's a really compact little house, but there's a little front patio out towards the view. There's a living area, a dining area, small kitchen dining area, and a little one bedroom on the back, open stairway. And then this just goes up to the second floor, which is 2 bedrooms on the upstairs with a bathroom. So essentially, this is what you've already approved. As far as the colors and materials and finishes, we'll look at all the lighting is, we've had all that reviewed on the interior and the exterior to meet Title 24, and dark sky, 100% cut-off fixtures, interior layout. The roof, as you guys recall, we've actually laid this out for photovoltaics back behind the parapets, so we've kind of nestled the house into the hillside as much as possible. Little bit about the finishes, and here's we got all the windows, doors, details. We can come back to this if you've got any questions, but we'll look at the elevations. This is what how simple the house is, and if you recall, we've got we removed that whole front area that was a 2-story volume on the front. This is the single-story living area, and as far as colors and materials and finishes, this is our color board. 2 of these to give you a sense for what we're proposing for the color, and kind of helpful. This is what we presented initially. So we tried to tie together sort of the concept with this darker, and because we're in high fire, we've got real limited ability to sort of fenestrate the exterior and still meet our high fire requirements. But this is the exterior cladding, which is like a shiplap siding, which is a dark, kind of a, this is actually their color that the Hardy Plank manufacturer has. It's a horizontal shiplap siding that's a dark gray, and what do they actually call that?
They call it almost black.
Yeah. It's a kind of rich color, and then this was a darker sand color. And if you recall from our when we presented these elevations, I think the board really kind of liked the color and material palette that we presented initially, which was it wasn't some bright glare. There's a number of houses on that hill that are sort of bright and glary. So this is really trying to, this earth tone is almost right from the dirt. We took the dirt from the site and tried to match that color to it. We've got the other materials. We've got a rusted steel panel door that's a standard flat panel door that we're actually putting a cold rolled steel on. Here's a piece of rusted metal. So this is actually was a clear metal panel that we put a patina to. So this is what it looks like in a matter of days. This is 1 day. This is 2 days. This is 3 days with the applied finish here. So just to give you a sense for kind of how the rust color and the darker color would work together. And the exterior light fixtures are an architectural bronze signature, which is again trying to pick up the color of the rust. The glazing is a pretty simplistic clear aluminum finish, and with the Solexia slight green finish, which is a low E kind of energy efficient material. And actually, I think the green really is going to pick up some of the colors that we showed before as far as overall look and feel of trying to carry that forward. So we're pretty excited about it, actually. I think it's going to be a really interesting, cool, unassuming modern house up there on the hillside. So that's kind of palette of color materials. I can show you Front elevation, rear elevation, again, these are what you've already reviewed and approved. It's same height, same materials. This is the side elevation, and remember how this sort of really integrated itself into the hillside, still doing the same thing, and articulating on both sides. Remember, this is the neighbor right next door who ended up supporting our project, so this was kind of a good story of how we could work with him to break down the mass, bulk, and scale of the overall project. We've got a number of sections. We've dealt with all the stormwater mitigation issues on site. We've got building sections in here that show kind of how this is going to work. Pretty interesting this vertical stair elements we think is going to be a really nice feature on the south side. And these horizontal fins that wrap around that glazed fixture. So the whole stairway is actually a glazed element with this keeps it from getting too hot because it's right on the south side. That's pretty much the architecture. I'm going to let Jessica talk about the landscape architecture, and then we're here for questions.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw the color out. So, again, simple irrigation plan, all drip irrigation, because we're not, or drip irrigation minus we have a little bit of MP rotator in through here for a little meadow area that we have proposed. Other than that, we have our point of connection at the water meter, pressure regulator, and backflow kind of tucked in behind this wall, so it's out of sight, out of mind. Fairly simple. The irrigation controller's located in the garage. It complies with the state's regulations. Landscape plan is the same as presented and approved last time. Oh, minus this big note that I made for Ann Marks. I didn't mean to print this one. So her only comment when I met with her was I had another oak tree up here. She said to take this and move it forward and to the side and substitute in the smaller tree that was on site, which is Laurus nobilis. And other than that, the landscape plan is exactly the same. We have crushed glass on this kind of exposed roof that you can see from that glass stairway. So it gives you kind of the same feeling as a green roof without having the fire issues. And other than that, it's exactly the same as approved.
Anything else?
No, that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to public comment, I have a question to staff. So just to be clear, the stormwater tier 3 is been submitted and it is being reviewed? Is that what's going on?
It's actually, Katie is checking on that as we speak. Jim Rumley was supposed to review them today.
Okay.
And as far as I know, I don't have any more information about where it is in the process.
She said he was out of town all last week, and he's not back till Wednesday. Okay. And we had originally there was a mistake, and we got taken off the board completely. And then
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and then they put us back on because they realized there was an error, and so he never had a chance, I believe, to review
So it's in there. We just have to wait for the process.
And we have it within here as well, just to verify it's under the civil sheet.
And the civil sheets.
Yeah, all right.
Okay.
So the thinking was, Mr. Chair, that we would be able to get the design reviewed and approved, and if there's any SWIMP issues, they would be addressed administratively, I hope. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Let me
There's a
come back.
retention basin.
Katie's now back in a moment. So, Katie, what did you find out?
He said he did not have a chance to review it today, and he would do it first thing tomorrow.
Right. So a procedural question then.
Yes.
We're not allowed to give it final approval without his review?
Yeah, and that's actually direction from the Creeks Division is to have that Creeks, the review and approval be part of this process. So in this case, if you feel that the project is good enough for final approval, and if we get word from Creeks that the SWIMP is adequate, staff will schedule this perhaps for Monday's consent and have that approval happen on that date.
Okay. So this board could make a motion.
It's essentially comments only at this point.
Comments only, but that it appears to be final. We could make
But you
that
can make
com-
comments
and
to the
we would
effect-
move it to the consent calendar for final approval on Monday.
That's a possibility.
Thank you. Okay, comments? Or excuse me,
just
I'm
ask
sorry,
a
sorry, time out. I forgot one procedural question. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address this project? Do we get any communication?
No.
Okay, Cheryl, close public comment. Now I'll bring it back to the board. Go ahead.
Could you tell me what the crushed glass is? It's over the garage, right? And when you're in the garage, does it let the light through, or is it, no, it's like a roof material on top? Okay, I understand. It sounds really pretty.
If you look at the sections, you're going to just get the top of that roof, and we didn't want to see crushed gravel, so we just thought that you can do beautiful patterns with the little, crushed glass, and so that was our
You
idea.
have some beautiful modern materials.
Yeah, we wanted to do a green roof, but not allowed in the city. Allowed in the county, but not in the city, so.
Huh, okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions? Okay, let's go to comments. Anyone have comments?
I really appreciate the changes that you made earlier on. I think it's really a beautiful design for the, and I think it fits the neighborhood too. It would fit everywhere.
Jamie, did you have comments?
Yes, I think it's a very nice design project, and landscape looks good as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. No further comments. The chair would entertain a motion. We can make comments only with some indication of where it should go next.
Sure, it's your turn. You want to do it?
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make the turn. I move that we can't give you final, we can't give it, we can only.
Here's the language you may want to use. The board feels that the project that's now presented is conducive for final approval, but given the staff's review of Tier 3 requirements, the board would recommend that the project be moved to the next available consent calendar for final approval. Is that appropriate language?
That's appropriate language.
Okay. Anyone want to second that appropriate language?
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Okay, that's the motion on the floor. Cheryl, call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So carried. Okay, so we'll see you at 6.
Thank you.
Do we keep the color?
Thank you.
I think we're at the last item, so
You can
the
take some of
chair
these plans
will
with you.
adjourn the Monday, May 16th, 2000.